Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by AguayoKnight on Wattpad. Now let's start. Izumi was filled with fear, not just for her own life but for everyone around her. She attempted to punch the hand villain, but her strike was blocked by a massive purple creature known as a 𝐼𝐻𝐬. As the creature loomed over her, she closed her eyes in terror, unknowingly releasing an invisible distress signal from an ancient energy known as aura. Moments later, the ground began to tremble, causing everyone to lose their balance as cracks formed beneath them. Frantically, Izumi looked around before glancing behind her, her eyes widening at the sight of a man standing there. He wore a blue suit and fedora adorned with an unfamiliar symbol. The man regarded her with an impassive expression and spoke in a deep, smooth voice, acknowledging her as the one who had awakened him from his slumber. He noted that she still had much to learn before turning his attention to the villain. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the villains crashing into one another, trees and walls, leaving everyone in shock. Izumi struggled to find her voice, rendered speechless by the scene unfolding before her. The hand villain quickly recovered and ordered his 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to attack, shouting in fear. The 𝐼𝐻𝐬 charged at the mysterious stranger, only to be effortlessly swatted aside. The stranger then launched a series of powerful strikes against the 𝐼𝐻𝐬, which attempted to fight back, but it was futile. He expressed his disdain for the weakness of this new world, landing a decisive uppercut that sent the 𝐼𝐻𝐬 soaring through the roof and into the sky. The hand villain threw a fit, accusing the stranger of cheating, and charged at him, only to be struck by a blue sphere of energy. However, before the attack could fully take effect, he was whisked away by his accomplice, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, who also escaped. The stranger sighed and approached Aizawa, kneeling beside him. He placed his hand over Aizawa's injuries, beginning to heal him. He remarked that fighting alone was foolish, but a fool who protects others is better than anyone else. As his hand glowed blue, Aizawa began to glow as well, and his injuries gradually faded away. Izumi slowly approached the unknown man, while others looked on in awe, fear, or jealousy. She stuttered as she asked him what he was doing to her teacher and where he had come from. The man introduced himself as 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬, a demigod, and explained that he had been sealed above his temple. He mentioned that people called him 𝐼𝐻𝐻 for convenience and confirmed that he was healing Aizawa. Just then, the doors burst open, revealing the heroes, who were shocked to find all the villains defeated and a stranger healing Aizawa. All Might could only ask what had happened. Izumi began to explain the events, though she had no idea how 𝐻𝐻 had awakened from his slumber. The heroes wanted to express their gratitude, but 𝐻𝐻 ignored them, gazing at the sky as something crashed through the ceiling, leaving a crater behind. He commented on the delayed arrival of the 𝐼𝐻𝐬𝐻, which now lay motionless. Class 1A looked at 𝐻𝐻 with a mix of awe, wonder, amazement, and in some cases, anger. Everyone was curious about his abilities, having never seen the blue sphere before. Bakugo, in his typical fashion, shouted out in frustration, demanding to know what 𝐻𝐻's quirk was. In response, 𝐻𝐻 sent a weak aura sphere toward him for his outburst. Confused, 𝐻𝐻 asked what a quirk was, leaving everyone stunned that he was unfamiliar with the concept. Momo quickly recovered and explained that a quirk was a superpower possessed by 80% of the population, while the 20% without quirks were considered quirkless. 𝐻𝐻 listened and then remarked on the dire situation of those without help, expressing disappointment in the state of the world since his slumber. His gaze turned serious, and he conveyed that the changes he had witnessed were troubling. Izumi, though frightened, was curious about his mention of slumber and timidly raised her hand to ask what he meant. 𝐻𝐻 looked at her calmly, which eased the tension in the room, but his next words shocked everyone. He revealed that he had been in slumber for 800 years, awakened by her aura, which was still weak yet powerful enough to cause significant destruction. Izumi was taken aback and confused, prompting her to ask about aura and why she had access to it. All Might inquired as well. 𝐻𝐻 explained that aura was once a life force, an ancient art used to protect nature and those unable to defend themselves. He speculated that Izumi might be a descendant of his old friend, Sabrina, who had been a psychic. For a brief moment, a hint of emotion crossed his face before it vanished. He noted the oddity of Izumi's aura, given that Sabrina was a psychic princess. While everyone else was stunned, Izumi felt frozen in place, realizing she had been told she was part royalty. Meanwhile, Katsuki seethed with anger, wishing he had a similar lineage. Why is Deku a descendant and not me? I'm more powerful than he is. His rant was abruptly interrupted by an overwhelming aura of intent emanating from the demigod. Ash, with a calm demeanor, addressed him, stating that it was precisely his arrogance and brashness that disqualified him as a descendant. He remarked that the boy's foolish belief in his own power was laughable, and he wasn't even worth training. The chilling aura intensified, sending shivers of fear down everyone's spines. Eventually, Ash stood up and began to walk away, leaving All Might too intimidated to intervene. Not long after Ash departed, Todoroki collapsed, breathing heavily. He expressed his fear, feeling as though he had glimpsed his own demise. The others were similarly affected, all on the ground, except for Uraraka, who noticed Izumi was missing. Her sudden exclamation startled everyone. They quickly rose to search for Izumi, and upon stepping outside, they spotted her conversing with Ash. The girl with the frog-like appearance wondered what Izumi was doing, but no one had an answer. Soon after, Ash left, but it was clear that Izumi was excited about something. Everyone sensed that significant changes were on the horizon. Izumi was at home, watching the news report about 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 being attacked by villains, who were ultimately defeated by an unknown stranger. Meanwhile, she was trying to comfort her frightened and tearful mother. Unbeknownst to anyone, Ash stood silently on the tallest building, observing the town. He pondered how all the technology and machinery had been forgotten over time, leaving only modern-day remnants. He sighed, feeling overwhelmed by the multitude of unanswered questions. Turning his gaze toward Izumi's home, he began leaping from building to building, reminiscent of a certain ninja. His destination was Izumi's home, where he intended to help her harness her aura and teach her how to use it safely, as he had struggled to do in the past. Reaching into a pouch attached to his breaths, Ash retrieved a pair of fingerless green gloves. He believed they would assist her, just as they had helped him. As he prepared to move, he suddenly dodged a torrent of flames. He landed and turned to see 𝗟𝗏, a hero known for his fiery abilities, approaching him. 𝗟𝗏 had heard about this stranger from his son and sought to confront him, intending to portray him as a villain. He commanded Ash to stop, but was swiftly interrupted by a powerful punch to his stomach that sent him flying and rendered him unconscious. The bystanders watched in shock, relieved that they were not the targets of an attack. Annoyed by 𝗟𝗏's aggression, Ash continued to leap from building to building, avoiding any other heroes who might provoke him. Inko, Izumi's mother, was taken aback by the news report. She questioned who this powerful stranger was, capable of defeating a pro-hero. Izumi explained that the stranger was a 𝗟𝗏, but he preferred to be called Ash. He had offered her training to control a dormant power and revealed that they were part of a royal bloodline. Inko was astonished, both by the revelation of their royal lineage and by her daughter's willingness to accept training from a stranger. Just then, they heard a knock at the door. Izumi opened it to find no one there, but noticed a pair of gloves on the ground with a note attached. The note instructed her to meet Ash at the beach in the morning for training, emphasizing the importance of using the gloves to help regulate her aura. Izumi returned inside, donning the gloves, and informed her mother of her plans for the morning. Inko, after a moment of consideration, agreed but reminded her daughter to be careful. They shared a hug before Inko went to her room to rest. Ash observed from a nearby building, watching Izumi and Inko. A small smile crept onto his face before he returned to his stoic expression. The next morning, Izumi dressed in her training clothes and arrived at the beach, finding it empty. She began her stretches, and after a few minutes, Ash landed nearby with a loud thud, startling her and prompting a cute gasp. Ash couldn't help but chuckle at her reaction. Izumi turned to Ash, ready for her training. He explained that they would start with meditation to awaken her aura. Sitting down like a monk, He instructed her to slow her breathing and clear her mind, encouraging her to connect with the nature around her. As she focused, she felt a tingling sensation in the back of her mind, prompting her to concentrate on it. Ash observed her with a small smile, while sand began to float around them, a phenomenon that would confuse those who could not perceive or 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐸 aura. To those who could see and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲𝐸 aura, a vibrant green flame-like energy enveloped Izumi, growing stronger by the moment. Ash sensed her dormant power and anticipated this development, though he was surprised by how much it continued to swell. He instructed her to pause, and at the sound of his voice, Izumi slowly opened her eyes, noticing the sand around her levitating and the green aura surrounding her. As she looked up at Ash, she saw his aura was a light blue, nearly white, and she was taken aback by the immense power radiating from him. Ash stood up, prompting Izumi to follow suit. He then expressed his eagerness to see her quirk. Izumi activated One for All, preparing to launch an attack toward the ocean, but Ash halted her with a steady gaze that made her squirm slightly. He advised her to distribute her power evenly across her body rather than concentrating it in one spot, speaking softly to avoid startling her. Izumi nodded and closed her eyes, focusing on enveloping her body with One for All like her aura. When she opened her eyes, she unleashed a powerful gust of wind toward the ocean, causing the water to surge. The shock on her face was evident when she realized her arm remained unbroken. Ash began to clap, capturing her attention. He praised her for controlling a quarter of her power, assuring her that with more training, she would 𝗟𝗡 it completely. Izumi felt a blush creep onto her cheeks from the compliment. Curious about what they would learn next, Izumi asked her new teacher. Ash smiled, a hint of mischief in his expression, causing Izumi to regret her question. He explained that they would train in hand-to-hand combat and help her manifest a weapon from her aura. Afterward, they would work on amplifying her power with aura alongside her quirk. The calmness with which he described the training felt daunting to her. Despite a twinge of fear, Izumi resolved not to back down. She declared her readiness for whatever challenge lay ahead, silently reprimanding herself for her choice of words as Ash's smile widened. Izumi entered her classroom, visibly exhausted. Her first friend, 𝗟𝗏, immediately noticed her fatigue and the bandages adorning her. Izumi smiled and reassured her that she was just tired from intense training over the past week. Before anyone could inquire further, the door opened, prompting everyone to return to their desks. Their sensei, Aizawa, entered, also covered in bandages. Kirishima greeted him enthusiastically, while 𝗟𝗏 questioned whether he was truly okay. Aizawa responded lazily, stating that his health was not their concern and that he was fine thanks to whoever had healed him. He then warned them that their fight was not over yet, causing the class to tense with a mix of fear and determination, especially Izumi. Mineta shouted in alarm about more villains, but Aizawa silenced him with a piercing glare. Once his eyes returned to normal, he informed the class that the upcoming sports festival was approaching, and they would have the next 2 weeks off to train. The announcement excited everyone, but Izumi's focus remained on her glowing hand, signaling that it was time to intensify her training. Bakugo grinned, eager to prove himself as the top contender and determined to put Izumi in her place. Time passed, and Mina Ashida expressed her longing to wear her hero costume, prompting Tsuyu to remind her that it wouldn't be fair to the other classes not in the hero course. Meanwhile, Izumi conversed with her friends 𝗟𝗏 and Ida when Todoroki approached her, declaring that he believed they were the most powerful in the class. He acknowledged All Might's attention on her but stated his intent to defeat her, catching everyone off guard. Just as he turned to leave, a palpable pressure enveloped the group as Izumi's green aura flared around her. She countered his bravado, asserting that she had been training hard and had grown powerful, especially with her newfound abilities. Before anyone could respond, the pressure dissipated, and they were called to the field. Unbeknownst to them, Bakugo's fierce expression hinted at his determination to assert his demps. As they approached the packed stadium, Kirishima noted the nerves in the air, but Bakugo reveled in the excitement. Present Mick's booming voice welcomed everyone to the annual sports festival, joined by Aizawa, who questioned how he had been roped into this. Izumi scanned the crowd, spotting her mother with All Might and Ash on the stadium wall. Present Mike continued to announce the participants, highlighting Class 1A's previous battles against villains. The tension in the air was palpable as Class A felt the glares and jealousy from the other classes. Midnight, the rated R hero, took the stage, commanding silence and calling 𝗏𝗏𝐽 to give a speech as the class representative. 𝗏𝗏𝐽 stepped up to the mic, taking a deep breath, ready to make his mark. "I vow to win." This declaration drew boos from the crowd, and the rest of Class 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐸, standing at the front, expressed his frustration, questioning why Izumi had made such a bold statement, pointing out that it had made them a target. 𝗏𝗏𝐽, unfazed, simply walked away. Midnight cleared her throat, a bead of sweat trickling down her face. She announced that it was time to start the festival, gesturing to a giant TV displaying a spinning wheel. With a push of a button, the wheel began to spin, and all the students held their breath, watching intently as it slowed down to reveal the first round, an obstacle course. The first round is an obstacle course. Eraser, what are your thoughts on this? Mike turned to Eraserhead as all the classes moved to the starting line. Eraser glanced at the students, stating that the race had already begun, starting with the tunnel, which many found puzzling as it was known to be the most challenging part of the course. The students took their positions, and Izumi knelt down, two small bumps appearing on her back, noticed only by Ash, Aizawa, and All Might. Ash felt a swell of pride, while All Might and Aizawa exchanged confused glances. Suddenly, the sound of a gunshot echoed, and the students surged forward, colliding with one another in the chaos. Izumi began to glow with green lightning, green-tinted wings sprouting from her back, shocking everyone watching. With that, she took off like a jet, calling out to the others to keep up if they wanted to win. However, the crowded tunnel made it difficult for her classmates to follow, especially with Todoroki freezing the floor. Only those in Class A managed to dodge, albeit barely. 𝗏𝗏𝐽 shouted for Deku to return, calling him a useless nerd. Todoroki, determined not to lose with his father watching, created ice in front of himself to try and keep pace with Izumi, who was already far ahead. As Izumi approached a zero-pointer, she tore through it effortlessly to maintain her lead, wondering how much money UA spent on creating such obstacles. The other students began to catch up, only to find many of them frozen or destroyed by Izumi, Todoroki, and 𝗏𝗏𝐽, with the frozen ones beginning to topple over. "Let's get past as fast as we can," one student urged, attempting to run under the giant robots, only for them to fall on two of their classmates. Shocked, they scrambled to climb over the debris. Then, a loud banging sounded as Kirishima emerged from one of the robots. "Not manly, Todoroki. If it was anyone else, they would be finished." More banging followed as a student from Class B burst out as well. "Class A-some. If it was anyone but me, they would be done for." Tetsu, with his iron quirk, declared. Kirishima, frustrated by the similarity of their quirks, grumbled about how it would be harder for him to stand out. The race continued as Todoroki and 𝗏𝗏𝐽 reached the landmines, only to hear Mike announce that Izumi Midoriya had won first place. He turned to Eraserhead, asking what he had been teaching the students. They learned to never hesitate in the face of a villain attack, but it seems like the problem child has taken that lesson to heart and has learned to control her quirk to a whole new level, Aizawa replied. Todoroki crossed the finish line just before 𝗏𝗏𝐽, and Mike announced that Todoroki had secured second place, with 𝗏𝗏𝐽 in third, while Aoyama finished last. Midnight explained that only the top 14 could proceed, but the next round would allow everyone to participate in the cavalry battle, with teams of 3 to 4. Points would range from 5 to 200, based on their placements in the race. Izumi calculated that her points would be at least 290, but that thought was soon overshadowed when Midnight revealed that first place would be worth 10 million points. Izumi glanced around, noticing everyone staring at her with glowing red eyes, which made her nervous. However, a nod from Ash gave her the confidence she needed. Closing her eyes for a moment, she opened them again, releasing a powerful aura that intimidated those around her. "If you want my points, then come and try to take them." Her determination and newfound strength made her a formidable presence. Uraraka, Ida, and Mina looked at Izumi with awe and newfound respect. The students began to pair up, and Izumi teamed up with Uraraka, Momo, and Hatsum, a student from the support class. Izumi took a moment to steady her breathing, her heart racing as her teammates prepared for the challenge ahead. Bakugo glared at her, filled with hatred and anger, convinced that he needed to prove he was better. Todoroki focused on Izumi, determined to win using only his left side, believing he could prove himself with just half of his power. All the students waited anxiously for the signal. After what felt like hours, which was merely 3 minutes, the gun fired into the air, and they all charged for the 1 million points. Ochako and Momo, aided by Mei's inventions, sped away, while Izumi prepared her own move, 2 small green orbs appearing in her hands. With a powerful throw, she launched the orbs at the ground in front of Todoroki and Bakugo, blinding them in a flash of light. Inko watched in shock, her jaw dropped as she witnessed her daughter using powers she had never seen before. Above the stands, Ash wore a proud smile, witnessing Izumi's growth. The chaos of the battle had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. As Team Katsuki emerged from the smoke, they nearly crashed out of the ring but managed to stay inside. Present Mike quickly regained his composure to commentate, exclaiming that the Green Princess had more tricks up her sleeve, leaving everyone in awe. Izumi and her team skillfully dodged their opponents while secretly accumulating points. Izumi encouraged her teammates to keep the momentum going, and they responded with determination as Momo created small shields to protect herself, Ochako, and Mei. Izumi summoned her wings again, clapping them once to soar into the air with her team, while Mei activated her jetpack midair to extend their flight. Ochako marveled at the timer, surprised that they had managed to stay airborne for 2 minutes. Izumi reminded them that they still had 5 more minutes left in the match. As they landed back on the ground, they observed the other teams battling fiercely. Mei reminded them to protect their points, while Momo calmly suggested they maintain the pressure. Shoto glanced at Izumi just as Ida prepared to unleash his secret weapon. He urged Ida to go for it, and Ida sped toward Izumi, flames erupting from his legs. Unbeknownst to him, Izumi's eyes began to shimmer with a small white star as she deftly leaned out of the way. Ida zoomed past them in an instant. Shoto stared at his hand in disbelief, hoping for a breakthrough, but his team was left stunned when he admitted he hadn't succeeded. Their shock deepened as they witnessed Izumi's team block Bakugo from seizing the headband. Bakugo, determined to score points, launched himself at Izumi, but just then, the loud horns signaled the end of the battle, causing everyone to burst into laughter as Katsuki landed face first. Midnight cleared her throat to capture everyone's attention. She announced that Team Midoriya had secured first place, prompting cheers for the all-female team. Team Todoroki took second place, earning more applause, while Team Bakugo settled for third, receiving only polite claps. Kirishima remarked that third place wasn't so bad, but Mina pointed out Bakugo's frustration as he shouted in exasperation, only to be interrupted by a small blue sphere of energy that surprised everyone. Ash sat calmly in plain sight, munching on an apple. Midnight continued, announcing that Team 𝗏𝐿 had taken fourth place, leaving everyone in shock, especially 𝗏𝐿's teammates, who were confused by the sudden turn of events. 𝗏𝐿 thanked his teammates as he walked away, while the other students headed to the cafeteria to recharge. Shoto and the others turned to talk to Izumi, only to see her sprinting toward the cafeteria. By the time they arrived, she had already vanished. Izumi had grabbed a bag of fries, burgers, 2 drinks, and 2 bags of Doritos. She leaped into the air and landed on the stands, running toward Ash, who was only 10 feet away. She called out to him, and he nodded as she came to a stop in front of him. They sat down, and Izumi revealed all the food she had brought. Ash inquired if she had brought food with her, and she nodded with a smile. He took a fry and complimented her on her improved control over her aura, which made her blush with pride. She expressed gratitude for his guidance, and Ash acknowledged her growth but cautioned her not to become arrogant, as it could lead to trouble. Izumi nodded, appreciating his advice. As they enjoyed their burgers, Ash's gaze fell on 𝗟𝗏𝐻, stirring feelings of resentment within him due to past encounters. Izumi noticed the change in his expression and asked if he was okay. He reassured her calmly, but when she gently touched his cheek, he was taken aback. Realizing her action, Izumi's face flushed as she quickly withdrew her hand, apologizing for invading his personal space. Ash suggested they hurry before the next rounds began, prompting Izumi to jump up and check the giant screen, realizing he was right. Just before she leaped down, she felt a brief kiss on her cheek, causing her blush to deepen. When she turned to find Ash gone, she shook her head, reminding herself to stay focused as she dashed back into the stadium. Present Mic announced the next match, introducing Izumi, the upcoming glowing green angel, against Hitoshi 𝐼𝐻𝐻, who had yet to make a notable impression. The crowd cheered as Izumi stepped into the battle ring, while 𝗟𝐻𝐻 plotted ways to provoke her. Izumi, however, was distracted by thoughts of her earlier encounter with Ash, a faint blush on her cheeks. Midnight commanded attention with her WHP, stating her expectations for a clean fight and emphasizing that the match would conclude when one fighter was knocked out, forced out of the ring, or chose to surrender. 𝗟𝐻𝐻 smirked, contemplating the possibility of an easy victory through a simple concession. That's good to know. He stared at Izumi, contemplating the best ways to provoke her. Izumi met his gaze, determined not to back down anytime soon. Unbeknownst to them, the enemy was also watching. At an abandoned bar, Shigaraki glared at his laptop screen, scratching his neck furiously. The green-haired girl possessed the same power as him, and his hatred was palpable. His teacher, observing from another screen, was silently impressed by Izumi's abilities and began devising plans to acquire her power for himself. Kurohige remained silent, but a keen observer could see him trembling slightly, gripped by the silent fear of the man who had effortlessly defeated the Nomu. Back at the sports festival, Midnight initiated the match by dramatically tossing her WHP onto the floor. The crowd was on the edge of their seats as Izumi assumed an unfamiliar martial arts stance. 𝗟𝐻𝐻 looked at her, feeling a twinge of intimidation. He thought it must be a blessing to possess such a powerful quirk. Izumi remained silent, focused, while 𝗟𝐻𝐻 felt a surge of frustration. He realized that the weak monkey had informed her about his quirk. In a flash of anger, Izumi charged at him with incredible speed, surpassing even Ida's earlier performance, leaving her friends and classmates astonished. Izumi unleashed a flurry of powerful strikes on 𝗟𝐻𝐻, who struggled to defend himself against her relentless assault. With a final kick to his stomach, he nearly toppled out of the ring. The crowd erupted in shock at the display of skill. Aizawa was equally astonished by her speed and strength, noting that she had achieved this without her quirk active. All Might and Inko were taken aback by the intensity of her anger, wondering what 𝗟𝐻𝐻 had said to provoke such a fierce response. As 𝗟𝐻𝐻 struggled to rise, clutching his stomach in pain, he reflected on the rapid turn of events. She had overwhelmed him before anyone could react. He felt a mix of fear and pain coursing through him. Meanwhile, Izumi began to calm down, and the spectators noticed her composure returning. She reminded herself that she must not let her emotions control her, recalling her teacher's warning that her aura powers could spiral out of control if she lost focus. She glanced at 𝗟𝐻𝐻, who was still trying to regain his footing. 𝗟𝐻𝐻 breathed heavily, bewildered by what had just transpired. Izumi walked toward him slowly, causing him to flinch. Midnight then posed a question to 𝗟𝐻𝐻, asking if he would forfeit. The entire stadium watched as he stared at Izumi, ultimately shaking his head in refusal. The crowd gasped, especially after witnessing the beating he had just endured. Izumi, frustrated, punched the ground, causing the stadium to tremble and forcing 𝗟𝐻𝐻 to struggle to maintain his balance. All Might was astonished, realizing that even he had not been able to achieve such a feat during his first encounter with One for All. Ash appeared shortly after, observing the situation with a smile. He noted how much Izumi had improved but recognized that she still had much to learn before facing her true enemies. He resolved to assist her where possible, but it was her time to showcase her abilities as the new Aura Guardian Princess. Izumi lifted her fist from the small crater she had created, determination shining in her eyes. She reflected on how she had only gained this power nearly a year ago and vowed to protect the world from the lurking evils. As she focused on 𝗟𝐻𝐻, green lightning began to crackle around her body. With a powerful punch, She unleashed a wave of air pressure that sent him flying out of the ring, shocking everyone even further. She resolved to hold nothing back and give her all. Midnight announced Izumi as the winner, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Izumi approached 𝐼𝐮𝐲, offering him a hand to help him up. He was taken aback but accepted her assistance to stand. She advised him to train physically, as it would aid him in entering the hero course one day, expressing her hope to see him again. As she walked away, students from 𝐼𝐮𝐲's class cheered for him, celebrating his progress in the sports festival. 𝐼𝐮𝐲 couldn't help but smile, a few tears escaping as he made his way to Recovery Girl for healing. He thought about taking her advice to heart, realizing he would need it. Ash watched with a smile, then turned his attention to the crowd. He glanced at 𝗟𝗏𝐿, pulling a small USB from his pocket, smirking with a hint of malice. He thought about how 𝗟𝗏𝐿 would handle his fame once the contents of the USB were revealed to the world. It was time for the next fight. Present Mike announced the matchup, generating excitement among the crowd. Momo took a deep breath, contemplating her strategy for the battle, while 𝗏𝗏𝐬 assessed the field, hoping to find an advantage while remaining calm. The match began, and 𝗏𝗏𝐬 immediately took the lead. He commanded Dark Shadow to attack, and the shadowy figure surged from his back, charging at Momo, who quickly created a shield for protection. She felt herself being pushed back and thought that she needed to wait for his assault to cease before striking back. When the attack finally stopped, she began to create a staff, seizing her opportunity. Midnight announced that Momo was out of bounds, declaring 𝗏𝗏𝐬 the winner. Momo was left in shock, devastated by the outcome, and walked away with her head down, her confidence shaken. The next match was announced, 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐬 versus 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐬. Both competitors entered the arena, but 𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐬 was laden with an array of gadgets, hinting at the chaos to come. Even the now awakened demigod struggled to contain his laughter at the unfolding spectacle. Midnight announced that 𝐼𝐻𝐻 had moved on to the next round. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 walked back to the waiting area with his head down, feeling embarrassed and ashamed. Uruka was trying to cheer him up while stifling her laughter alongside Izumi. Aizawa announced the next match, stating that it would showcase the strength the students had gained. Izumi turned to Uruka, who was visibly anxious about her upcoming match against 𝗏𝗏𝐻𝐻. With a signal from Midnight, the match began, and it ended almost instantly as Todoroki froze the entire ring with his ice. The spectators were taken aback by the sudden drop in temperature and Todoroki's overwhelming power. Midnight asked 𝗟𝗏 if he could continue, but he sarcastically replied, questioning if it looked like he could, as he was encased in ice with only his face visible. Midnight declared Todoroki the winner, and as the ice melted, 𝗟𝗏 was freed from his icy confinement. Aizawa informed everyone that the next round would begin in 10 minutes, advising them to use the time wisely. Izumi turned to find Uruka had left the area, prompting her to search for her friend in the waiting room. Ida and Kirishima followed to support Uruka. Upon entering the room, Izumi surprised Uruka, who was even more astonished when Ida and Kirishima joined them. Izumi expressed her longing to wish Uruka luck and handed her a notebook filled with her studies on quirks, including Uruka's. However, Uruka pushed it back, smiling as she declared her intention to win on her own. Ida, somewhat naively, suggested that 𝗏𝗏𝐻𝐻 might take it easy on her, but Izumi shook her head, recalling their long history with 𝗏𝗏𝐻𝐻. Kirishima tried to defend 𝗏𝗏𝐻𝐻, but Izumi's serious expression made him reconsider. Just then, Ash appeared, leaning against the wall and catching them off guard. He commented on Uruka's determination and offered her a piece of advice about dodging 𝗏𝗏𝐻𝐻's attacks before leaving the room. Kirishima, still processing what had just happened, wondered aloud about Ash's presence. Izumi explained that Ash had been training her since the USJ incident and reassured them that he was a kind person who fought for the innocent. Ida questioned the wisdom of associating with someone who used his powers for personal gain, but Izumi's glare silenced him as she defended Ash's actions. Kirishima eventually spoke up, siding with Izumi, which surprised Uruka. Before she could respond, an announcement interrupted her. The intercom called for Uruka and 𝗏𝗏𝐻𝐻 to enter the ring. Aizawa chastised the commentary for showing favoritism, emphasizing the importance of respect in the matches. As Uruka stepped into the arena, The crowd cheered for her, while 𝗏𝐿 entered with a fierce expression. Midnight signaled the start of the fight, and 𝗟𝗏 charged at 𝗏𝐿. He was taken aback but quickly retaliated with a blast, only to be surprised when 𝗟𝗏 emerged from the smoke unharmed and landed a solid punch on his face, causing the crowd to erupt in cheers. 𝗏𝐿 regained his composure and launched a series of attacks, but 𝗟𝗏 skillfully dodged them. Determined, she declared to herself that she would win like Izumi. She landed a powerful punch to 𝗏𝐿's stomach, causing him to stagger. Angered, 𝗏𝐿 unleashed a large explosion that sent 𝗟𝗏 flying back, but she quickly got back on her feet and charged at him once more. The crowd grew increasingly frustrated with 𝗏𝐿's attitude, booing him after a pro hero called out for him to ease up. This prompted Aizawa to intervene, stating that showing respect to one's opponent was crucial and that 𝗏𝐿 was acknowledging 𝗟𝗏's ability to fight back. He warned the crowd and the pro hero to reconsider their actions, emphasizing the importance of sportsmanship in the matches. Before anyone could say anything, the announcer warned Mike not to let his personal feelings interfere. He needed to remain unbiased and neutral during the fights. His stern tone silenced the crowd, halting their booing at 𝗏𝐿 and almost bringing the unknown pro hero to tears. Everyone turned their attention back to the battle, witnessing a bruised yet defiant 𝗏𝐿 smirking, while 𝗟𝗏 appeared battered and exhausted from the intense fight. Aizawa pointed out the absence of rubble amidst the chaos, smirking at the situation. 𝗟𝗏 flashed a grin at 𝗏𝐿, leaving him and the crowd puzzled. She raised her hands and called out her signature move, Meteor Shower Crash. 𝗏𝐿 looked up, startled to see a massive amount of debris and broken concrete. With determination, he clenched his fists and unleashed a powerful explosion, sending 𝗟𝗏 tumbling backward. 𝗟𝗏 struggled to rise, her thoughts racing. She couldn't afford to lose. She had to reach the finals to meet Izumi and help her parents. She managed to stand but collapsed after a few steps, calling out for her family. Midnight examined 𝗟𝗏 closely before declaring 𝗏𝐿 the winner. The crowd erupted in applause for him. 𝗏𝐿 turned away, acknowledging 𝗟𝗏's effort despite her flawed strategy. He headed into the tunnel for treatment of his minor injuries. Izumi rushed to the medical room, accompanied by Ida, Kirishima, and Tsuyu. Upon entering, they were surprised to find 𝗟𝗏 awake and smiling. She admitted her disappointment at losing, but her friends remained concerned, their expressions revealing their worry. Just then, a blue light enveloped 𝗟𝗏, healing her injuries. Tsuyu, visibly anxious, asked what was happening. Izumi reassured her, explaining that Ash was healing 𝗟𝗏 with his powers. The glow faded, revealing a fully healed 𝗟𝗏. Ash commended her progress, expressing his admiration for how far she had come. He encouraged her to stand tall and show her strength to others before giving a playful salute and disappearing. Izumi, feeling a bit left out, sighed but smiled at her friend. She asked 𝗟𝗏 if she was ready to return to the others, and 𝗟𝗏 nodded, embracing her friends before they set off together. Kirishima excitedly declared they should hurry back, while Ida reminded them not to run in the halls, even as he rushed ahead himself. Tsuyu chuckled, commenting on the boys' antics as they all followed suit. Upon reaching the arena, they saw Tokoyami finishing his fight against Mina. Izumi wondered how long they had been gone. Present Mike announced that the next match, Ida versus 𝗅𝐵℔, would begin shortly. Ida promptly made his way to the ring, promising to see Izumi in the finals with a small smile. As Ida and 𝗅𝐵℔ entered the ring, Midnight confirmed their readiness to fight. 𝗅𝐵℔ initiated the match by attempting to ensnare Ida with her vines, but he countered with a swift move, knocking her out of the ring and securing a quick victory. Present Mike declared Ida the winner, noting the brevity of the match but praising his speed. He then announced that the next match would be Izumi versus Todoroki, which would pause the remaining matches afterward. Izumi made her way to the field but was intercepted by 𝗏𝐿, who was returning to the stands. He accused her of plotting with Deku, but she brushed him off, stating that 𝗟𝗏 had devised the plan independently and that she was done protecting him. As Izumi continued toward the ring, 𝗟𝗏 unexpectedly appeared before her. He acknowledged her bravery in facing him but expressed his belief that she would be a suitable match for Shoto, hoping to push him to 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 his flames and fulfill his potential. Izumi met his arrogance with calm defiance, asserting that she was not all might and that Todoroki would use his powers for himself, not for endeavor. She walked away, reaching the ring and focusing on Todoroki across from her. Midnight sensed the tension and announced the start of the match. Todoroki attempted to finish quickly with a wide ice attack, but when the glacier exploded, Izumi emerged unscathed, surrounded by green electricity, and her aura wings spread wide, captivating everyone with her presence. "It'll take more than this to beat me, Todoroki," she declared, ready for the challenge ahead. Izumi calmly told Todoroki that he would need to use his full power, not just half of it. She suddenly appeared in front of him and struck him with a powerful punch, nearly knocking him out of the ring, but he managed to save himself with ice. Todoroki, frustrated by her words, unleashed wave after wave of ice, but Izumi effortlessly shattered them and countered with physical attacks. As the battle continued, Todoroki began to tire and felt the effects of frostbite. Izumi observed his condition and urged him to use his full power, emphasizing that everyone else was giving their all. She struck him in the stomach, sending him flying back, and expressed her disappointment in his lack of respect for the fight and for being a hero. Her words triggered memories for Todoroki, reminding him of a time when he asked his mother if he could be a hero and she encouraged him to be whoever he wanted to be. In that moment, his fire erupted in a blaze. Izumi smiled, a sight that caught Todoroki's attention. He questioned her smile, thinking she was aiding the enemy, but she clarified that she was pleased he was no longer holding back. She took to the air, flapping her wings to evade his attack. All Might watched with a smile, recognizing Izumi's strategy and commenting on her potential as a hero. Inko, filled with pride, realized that her daughter was helping others confront their inner struggles, even if they were her opponents. As Izumi charged at Todoroki, he prepared for his final attack. Midnight called out to 𝐶EMENTOS, urging him to intervene before the two could seriously harm each other. 𝐶EMENTOS constructed 5 massive walls, but Izumi tore through them effortlessly, and Todoroki's flames burned through as well. The resulting explosion was unforgettable, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. As the dust settled, Izumi stood confidently in the center of the ring, wings folded and arms crossed. The crowd searched for Todoroki and found him outside the ring, unconscious. Present Mic announced Izumi's victory, and the crowd erupted in cheers, chanting her new moniker. Aizawa noted that Izumi had become the crowd favorite and announced a break to allow for repairs to the stage. He encouraged everyone to take the time to grab food and drinks, then settled into his sleeping bag for a nap. Izumi returned to the stands, greeted by her friends and classmates who showered her with praise and encouragement, making her smile brightly. The boys blushed at her radiant expression while the girls gathered for a group hug. Ash observed her and her friends with a faint smile, but it quickly faded as he sensed a child in distress. Despite his instinct to help, he felt compelled to wait. Present Mic announced the finals, starting with Bakugo vs Kirishima, followed by Ida vs Midoriya. The winners of these semi-final matches would advance to the final round to compete for the championship of the sports festival. Aizawa called for both contestants to come down to the ring, which had been repaired after the earlier chaos. As the crowd eagerly awaited the match, Izumi quietly slipped away, unnoticed by most except for her mother, Inko. Concerned, Inko stood up and excused herself, following the path Izumi had taken. Meanwhile, Kirishima and Bakugo entered the ring, with Kirishima stretching and mentally preparing to showcase his strength. Bakugo relaxed his tense muscles with a flick of his wrist. Midnight checked the time before focusing on the contestants, confirming they were ready. She announced the start of the match, and Kirishima hardened his skin to launch an attack, while Bakugo dodged and countered with an explosive right hook. Outside, Izumi found herself among the pros and spectators, all captivated by the massive screen. Unbeknownst to her, Inko was still in pursuit, confused by her daughter's actions. Izumi crouched and leaped to the roof of the stands to join Ash, while Inko searched for a way to follow her. Luck was on her side when she spotted a ladder nearby, attached to the stadium. She began to climb up. Back to the fight. The entire match had turned into an endurance contest as both fighters dodged and attacked each other. The spectators in the stands realized it would take a while to determine a winner, so they settled in as 𝐼𝐼𝐷 unleashed a powerful explosion that sent Kirishima staggering back. Back to Izumi, she approached Ash, who was intently focused on the match. As she walked over, her mother finally reached the top of the ladder and took a moment to rest, breathing slightly from the climb. After catching her breath, she stood up and brushed off her clothes, thinking to herself that she needed to find Izumi. She moved toward a corner where anyone could easily hide. Izumi sat down next to Ash and asked him what he thought of the fight so far, tilting her head as she looked at him. Ash found her cute but maintained his calm demeanor as he replied that the fight was merely an endurance match, with one fighter using his quirk to attack while the other relied on martial arts to withstand the blows. He added, with his usual deadpan expression, that it was rather boring. Izumi couldn't help but laugh at his comment and expression. Unbeknownst to them, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 heard Izumi's laughter and found them. She looked at her daughter sitting next to a young man she had never seen before, laughing, and was puzzled by the contrast between Izumi's joy and Ash's stoic demeanor. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 decided to make her presence known by clearing her throat. As she did, Izumi stopped laughing, and Ash appeared slightly surprised, though it was hard to tell. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 asked Izumi what she was doing up there with this young man, her tone stern. Izumi turned slowly to her mother, fumbling for words, which amused Ash. He then turned to 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and calmly introduced himself, surprising her with his composure. Back to the fight, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 started to gain the upper hand, landing blow after blow. He shouted that this was his victory, continuing to use his quirk. Kirishima, barely dodging the explosions, struggled to land a hit on 𝐼𝐻𝐬 while trying to keep his quirk active. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 taunted Kirishima, demanding to know if this was all he had, and launched himself toward him with renewed force. Back to a nervous Izumi, she remained frozen in place, feeling like a frightened kitten as her mother scrutinized Ash, trying to determine if he was trying to deceive her. To her surprise, he was not. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 cautiously questioned Ash about his claim of being Izumi's teacher. Ash offered a small smile and explained that he meant no harm, and even if he did, no one here would be powerful enough to stop him. He elaborated that he had been training Izumi to harness her aura, enabling her to create barriers, use aura spheres, and forge her own weapons. His calm demeanor amidst the chaos of the match astonished both 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and Izumi. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 turned to her daughter for confirmation, but Izumi was looking down, so she simply nodded. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 looked back at Ash, preparing to ask his name. He introduced himself as 𝗟𝗓 but suggested that everyone just call him Ash for simplicity. Back to the fight. Kirishima was breathing, his stamina waning, while 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was still full of energy. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 charged at him, unleashing a powerful explosion. Kirishima attempted to block it but was thrown out of the ring, landing on his back, exhausted. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, breathing but grinning with exhilaration, declared that this was payback for messing with him. The announcer declared 𝐼𝐻𝐬 the winner, advancing him to the finals. Unfortunately, Iida had to withdraw due to a family emergency, allowing Izumi to take his place in the finals. The match would begin in 30 minutes. Many in the crowd were disappointed by Iida's departure but decided to wait for the upcoming match, ready to cheer for the Green Angel. Back to Izumi, she snapped out of her daze upon hearing the announcement and turned to see the crowd eagerly anticipating the fight, cheering for her. Ash calmly remarked that it was time for her to head down to the arena. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, still astonished by Ash's calmness, questioned how he could remain so composed in a stadium filled with heroes. Izumi explained to her mother that Ash was far stronger than anyone present and that he would teach her more in the future. Ash reminded Izumi to avoid arrogance during the fight, as it could lead to her downfall if she wasn't careful. He then offered to help 𝐼𝐻𝐬 down to the stands so she wouldn't tire herself out. As he picked her up, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was startled and flailed slightly, while Izumi laughed at the situation. Ash wished Izumi good luck and praised her efforts as he floated down to the stands with 𝐼𝐻𝐬, setting her back on her feet and allowing her to lead the way. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 sighed in relief after being set down but glared at Ash, expressing her frustration at his lack of warning before lifting her. Ash merely shrugged in response. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 led Ash back to where she sat next to 𝐼𝐻𝐻, surprisingly finding an empty seat next to him. 𝐼𝐻𝐻 was about to wave at 𝐼𝐻𝐬 when he noticed Ash, a figure who instilled more fear in him than his greatest rival. He gulped and tried to keep his head low, though it was difficult given his stature. Ash observed All Might with a deadpan expression, thinking to himself about how the hero was trying to hide from him. Both Ash and 𝐼𝐻𝐽 took their seats next to All Might, waiting for the match to begin. Ash quietly remarked that it would be quite humiliating for Bakugo, which piqued 𝐼𝐻𝐽's and All Might's curiosity. 𝐼𝐻𝐽 hesitated to ask for clarification, but All Might couldn't remain silent and inquired about Ash's comment. Young Bakugo could last a little while without being humiliated, or so Ash believed. He had trained her relentlessly for the past 3 weeks after being freed from his slumber, determined to show her that Bakugo was not a true friend. His cold tone made 𝐼𝐻𝐽 and those nearby flinch. All Might wanted to respond but chose to remain silent this time. "Will the finalists please come out to the field?" announced Present Mic, drawing everyone's attention to the arena with anticipation. Izumi and Katsuki emerged from their respective tunnels. Bakugo wore a fierce expression, while Izumi maintained a calm demeanor. Midnight sensed the tension in the air and raised her arms. She asked if the 2 finalists were ready, receiving a nod from both, which prompted her to signal the start of the match. "Begin!" she shouted, stepping back slightly. Bakugo launched an explosive attack at Izumi, creating a massive eruption. Many spectators thought the match was over, but as the smoke cleared, they saw a translucent green shield protecting her. Izumi calmly questioned Bakugo if that was all he could do, and the shield dropped. The shock on Bakugo and Class 1A's faces was evident as they realized she could do things others could not. Before Bakugo could react, Izumi charged at him at full speed, tripping him up. The crowd was taken by surprise, and many children laughed as she playfully wedged him. Bakugo screamed in a mix of pain and anger. Before he could recover, Izumi grabbed his leg and lifted him into the air, slamming him back down repeatedly, reminiscent of Hulk's treatment of Loki. She then stepped back, allowing him to stand while taunting him with the words, "puny bully." Ash and a few others with keen hearing caught her remark and chuckled. Bakugo finally managed to get to his feet, visibly in pain from the repeated slams. He shouted about showing Izumi her place and proving he was better than her. He unleashed a series of powerful explosions, but Izumi easily dodged them. Her response was simply foolish, before delivering a swift punch to his gut, causing him to spit out saliva and gasp for air. A flurry of punches followed, and the crowd erupted in cheers for their green angel. As the combo ended, Izumi leaped and kicked Bakugo in the face. The crowd was confused until they heard her deadpan delivery of the phrase, "Roadhouse," which sent them into fits of laughter. Ash, in particular, was laughing heartily next to 𝐼𝐻𝐽 and All Might, who were both shocked and amused. Determined to finish the match, Izumi began powering up an aura sphere while Bakugo struggled to regain his footing. He shouted angrily, vowing to show her his strength. He jumped into the air, spinning with his quirk to create the strongest explosion possible. Izumi, however, was unfazed as she continued to grow her aura sphere, surprising Ash, who hadn't taught her that technique yet. Bakugo roared his attack, howitzer impact, as he dove toward her. Izumi countered by launching a massive beam, declaring storm. The 2 attacks collided, resulting in a spectacular explosion that engulfed the arena. As the dust settled, the crowd held their breath to see the outcome. When the dust finally cleared, Izumi stood tall, untouched by any of Bakugo's attacks, while he lay on the ground, bruised and battered but not broken. Present Mic announced, "Midoriya Izumi has won the UA Sports Festival." The crowd erupted in cheers. Ash smirked at how well Izumi had utilized her final storm technique for a beginner. 𝐼𝐻𝐽 felt immense pride in her daughter's growth and strength. All Might was pleased he had chosen the right person to inherit One for All, glad to see her become stronger than ever. Time passed, and Izumi stood in first place, with Bakugo in second, now restrained with chains and a muzzle. Todoroki claimed third, and Tokoyami took fourth. Midnight approached the podium, stating that this sports festival would be unforgettable. Just then, All Might landed beside her, declaring, "I am here." There was an awkward pause before Midnight began to apologize profusely, but All Might waved it off and moved toward Tokoyami, placing the 4th place medal around his neck and praising his hard work. He then approached Todoroki, commending him on his quirk's usage and strength before giving him a hug. Finally, All Might reached Bakugo and questioned the necessity of the chains and muzzle. After removing the muzzle, Bakugo shouted angrily about wanting to defeat Izumi. All Might quickly replaced it, realizing it was indeed necessary. He attempted to place the 2nd place medal around Bakugo's neck but ended up tucking it into his shirt instead. All Might then walked toward Izumi, ready to congratulate her. Young Midoriya impressed everyone with her newfound power and control over her quirk, far surpassing her previous abilities. All Might placed a gold medal around her neck and embraced her, expressing his belief that she would become a great hero. With a bright smile, she vowed to make everyone proud, and the crowd couldn't help but share in her joy. All Might addressed the audience, declaring that all contestants were winners. As the crowd prepared to cheer, a male voice interrupted, expressing frustration at the missed opportunity to shout, "Plus Ultra." All Might, feeling the pressure, insisted that everyone had done a fantastic job. Izumi smiled at Ash, who nodded back at her, causing her to blush slightly before she stepped down from the podium to join her classmates. Days passed since the sports festival, and Ash encouraged Izumi to take it easy. In a surprising turn, Izumi managed to convince Ash to live with her and her mother, a feat that left him bewildered. They were grocery shopping together, with Ash dressed casually in dark blue breathes and a black sleeveless shirt, wearing sunglasses. Izumi was diligently checking off items from her mother's list. They were purchasing more than usual, as Ash had generously provided them with funds, making life easier for 𝐒𝐮𝐬, who no longer needed to work double shifts. As Izumi reached for a chocolate pudding on a high shelf, she struggled and eventually looked to Ash for assistance. He sighed but complied, retrieving the pudding and placing it in the cart. Grateful, Izumi thanked him for his help in making their lives a bit easier. They filled their cart with various groceries, including cereal, snacks, fruits, and vegetables. Once they had everything on the list, they joined a shorter line at the checkout. Ash remarked that it would take some time, and Izumi giggled, knowing he was right. While waiting, she felt a tug on her shirt and turned to see a group of children staring at her. A little girl asked for her autograph, referring to her as the Green Angel. Ash explained that this was the nickname given to her by fans. Izumi happily knelt down to sign their notebooks, and the children ran off, beaming with excitement. After completing their shopping, they exited the market and headed to 𝐒𝐮𝐬's minivan, which they were using during Ash's stay. Ash had even managed to obtain a driver's license by hacking into the system to adjust his age. They loaded the groceries into the back of the van, taking a few minutes to fit everything in. Once settled, Ash drove them back to 𝐒𝐮𝐬, having traveled to a larger grocery store in the next town. As they drove, they sensed someone in distress nearby. Ash quickly stepped on the brakes and swerved to a stop. They got out of the minivan and heard footsteps coming from an alleyway. A little girl emerged, nearly colliding with Izumi, who instinctively picked her up to comfort her. The girl appeared frightened, with white hair, a small horn, and bandages wrapped around her body, wearing a tattered oversized shirt. Her striking red eyes caught their attention. Izumi gently spoke to the girl, reassuring her that no one would harm her. The girl, trembling, finally introduced herself as 𝐼𝐻𝐸, her voice shaky with fear. Just then, a man emerged from the alleyway, dressed in a fur-lined coat and a plague mask, exuding an ominous presence that put Izumi on high alert while Ash prepared to confront him. The man claimed he was merely scolding his daughter, demanding 𝐼𝐻𝐸 to come home. 𝐼𝐻𝐸, visibly shaken, struggled to escape Izumi's embrace but felt a sense of relief in her predicament. Ash, sensing the man's deceit, warned him that any aggressive move would have serious consequences. Ash warned the man known as 𝗟𝗏𝗸 that if he dared to touch the girls, he would face dire consequences. A powerful aura of killing intent radiated from him, causing 𝗟𝗏𝗸 to tremble in fear, as if he were facing a demon. Despite his fear, 𝗟𝗏𝗸 refused to back down and began to remove one of his gloves, declaring that he wouldn't leave without the girl. He charged at Izumi, who swiftly dodged and delivered a powerful kick to his gut, sending him crashing into a wall. Ash calmly took off his sunglasses and placed them on 𝐼𝐻𝐸, who adjusted them, confused by the dim lighting. He instructed Izumi to get into the van and stay there, assuring her he wouldn't be long. As Ash approached 𝗟𝗏𝗏, a faint glow surrounded him. He warned 𝗟𝗏𝗏 that he would now face the consequences of his actions. In a dramatic transformation, Ash became a large, demonic jackal before the eyes of Izumi, 𝗟𝗏𝗏, civilians, and news cameras. Before anyone could react, Ash dashed toward 𝗟𝗏𝗏 with incredible speed, dragging him into an alleyway. The sounds of struggle echoed, with the faint hints of bones cracking and 𝗟𝗏𝗏's desperate screams piercing the air. The onlookers were bewildered, as it seemed impossible for someone to endure such torment for long. However, Ash was using his powers to keep 𝗟𝗏𝗏 alive while he inflicted pain, prolonging his suffering before finally allowing him to succumb. Emerging from the alleyway, Ash returned to his normal form, not a trace of BLD on him. He unleashed a stream of white fire into the alley, erasing all evidence of the confrontation. Once back in the minivan, he drove slowly toward 𝗟𝗓𝗡, speaking to Izumi and 𝗟𝗏𝗏, who were startled by his sudden comment about the events in the alley. Izumi reached for Ash's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze while smiling at him. She reassured him that it was okay but urged him to control himself in the future, not wanting heroes to come after him due to his strength. Ash responded with a small smile, while 𝗟𝗏𝗏, curious about Izumi's expression, asked how she managed to smile like that. Both Ash and Izumi were momentarily confused but soon realized she was trying to understand how to express happiness. Ash comforted 𝗟𝗏𝗏, telling her not to worry too much and that she would learn what happiness felt like in time. He encouraged her to rest, as it had been a long day, and adjusted his sunglasses over her eyes as she leaned into Izumi, slowly drifting off to sleep. Izumi smiled at 𝗟𝗏𝗏, holding her close and gently stroking her hair, silently vowing to protect her. After a couple of hours, they arrived back at their apartment, which had become more spacious thanks to Ash's help. Once parked, Ash used his aura to carry the groceries and followed Izumi up the stairs. He found himself glancing at Izumi for a moment, quickly shaking his head to dispel any inappropriate thoughts, relieved that she was too focused on 𝗟𝗏𝗏 to notice. Reaching the 4th floor, they made their way to their apartment. Izumi held 𝗟𝗏𝗏 in one arm while unlocking the door with the other. Inside, they found Aizawa and 𝗏𝗏𝐷, who were attempting to project an intimidating presence, but it paled in comparison to Ash's own aura. Izumi settled onto one of the couches with 𝗟𝗏𝗏 still asleep in her arms, while 𝗏𝐻𝐻 closed the door. Ash leaned against the wall, keeping a watchful eye on everyone for 𝗟𝗏𝗏's sake, wondering if they had seen the news. 𝗏𝐻𝐻, equally confused about their presence, explained that they had come to talk to Izumi. Aizawa pointed at Ash, asking why he had killed 𝗟𝗏𝗏 instead of simply turning him in. His tone was lazy yet serious. Ash calmly explained that 𝗟𝗏𝗏 had ignored his warning and attacked the girls. He asserted that he didn't answer to anyone, given his experience, and that he would do it again if necessary. Aizawa felt a chill at Ash's unwavering calmness, while 𝗏𝗏𝐷 frowned at Ash's approach, suggesting that turning 𝗟𝗏𝗏 in might have been a better choice, believing he could change in prison. Ash's glare made 𝗏𝗏𝐷 flinch. Aizawa sighed, recognizing the danger in 𝗏𝗏𝐷's thinking. He then stated that they needed to take 𝗟𝗏𝗏 to an orphanage, but Izumi and Ash stood in their way, insisting that it was unwise to remove her after just saving her from an abusive situation. Ash stated that he would take an arm as a fee, staring down both Aizawa and 𝗏𝗏𝗏. Reluctantly, they decided it was best to leave the child with them. Toshinori informed 𝗏𝐻𝐻 that the school was changing and adding a dormitory for the students, meaning young Midoriya would have to move in. Suddenly, Izumi exclaimed that she would only agree to this if 𝗟𝗏𝗏 and Ash could move in with her, catching everyone off guard, including Ash. Aizawa responded that they could make that happen, while 𝗏𝗏𝗏, ready to protest, decided to let it be. He remarked that they would see the 3 of them after the internships. After a moment, Ash questioned what had just happened, directing his inquiry toward 𝗏𝗏𝗏, who shrugged in response. Izumi laughed softly, careful not to wake 𝗟𝗏𝗏, who was still blissfully asleep. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 reminded Izumi that she needed to prepare for her chosen internship. Ash gently took 𝗟𝗏𝗏 into his arms, ensuring he didn't wake her. Izumi nodded and got up to gather her things. She expressed a feeling that something significant was going to happen during the internship. Ash agreed but maintained his calm demeanor, assuring her that she was strong enough to face whatever came her way. He reminded her not to let her emotions control her, as that could lead to chaos. As they spoke, a stomach growled, and they turned to see 𝐼𝐻𝐬 starting to wake up. She let out a big yawn while rubbing her eyes, and the three of them found her adorable. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 announced that she would start making dinner and headed into the kitchen. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 looked around, saw Izumi smiling at her, and then noticed Ash, the nice man from before, holding her. Ash spoke to her softly, wishing her a good rest. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 nodded before being taken into Izumi's arms. Izumi noted that 𝐼𝐻𝐬 needed a bath and promised to make sure she was nice and clean. Ash found some clothes for 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and used his aura to create a towel with apple designs. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 grabbed hold of the towel while Izumi held the clothes in her other arm. Izumi declared it was time for a bath and headed into the bathroom with 𝐼𝐻𝐬. Ash went into the living room and turned on the news. A female reporter announced that two young people had saved a little girl from a villain known as 𝗟𝗏𝗸, who had been defeated by a young man. The report showed a picture of Ash, but his face was mostly obscured by shadow. A male reporter added that the incident had been too fast to comprehend, and no one wanted to know the details of how 𝗟𝗏𝗸 had met his end. He described how Ash had transformed and tackled 𝗟𝗏𝗸, with the sounds of a fierce struggle echoing in the alleyway. The newsman, visibly shaken, noted that Ash had unleashed white flames, erasing all evidence of the confrontation. The female reporter expressed relief that no one else had been harmed, while the male reporter warned that Ash was not to be trifled with. The broadcast concluded, and Ash changed the channel to find a movie. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Izumi had 𝐼𝐻𝐬 wrapped in a towel and adjusted the water to a warm temperature. When 𝐼𝐻𝐬 shivered at the sight of the water, Izumi hugged her gently, assuring her that no one would hurt her anymore. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 responded that she was ready, and Izumi slowly placed her in the tub, taking care not to frighten her. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 sat there for a few moments before relaxing, prompting Izumi to smile as she began to wash 𝐼𝐻𝐬's hair gently. She instructed 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to close her eyes when she said so, and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 complied. After 10 minutes of bathing, Izumi rinsed 𝐼𝐻𝐬 off and dried her with a towel, first focusing on her hair and then her body. She praised 𝐼𝐻𝐬 for being much cleaner and cuter, causing 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to blush, as she had never received such compliments before. Once 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was fully dressed, Izumi picked her up to look in the mirror. The ribbon held 𝐼𝐻𝐬's hair in a ponytail, and the oversized shirt looked like a dress on her. When they exited the bathroom and entered the living room, they found Ash watching a movie. He smiled at them, commenting on how adorable 𝐼𝐻𝐬 looked, which made her shy and hide her face in Izumi's shoulder. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 mentioned that dinner would be ready in 10 minutes. Izumi noticed the small tables in the living room, so she sat down and placed 𝐼𝐻𝐬 in the middle between herself and Ash. Izumi remarked that it was good because 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was hungry, gently petting 𝐼𝐻𝐬's head. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 felt confused by their kindness and began to tear up, which surprised both Ash and Izumi. She expressed her confusion about why they were being so kind to her, recalling how her father had called her a demon and a waste of space. Hearing this, Ash, Izumi, and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 embraced 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was overwhelmed with emotion. Izumi reassured her, stating that she was not a demon and that the man she referred to was not her father. She continued, emphasizing that a father should protect his child, not hurt them or call them names. As they held 𝐼𝐻𝐬, she broke down in tears. Ash smiled softly, stroking 𝐼𝐻𝐬's head and telling her that she was not alone anymore and that they were there for her. Izumi recalled a conversation she had with Ash during her training for the upcoming sports festival. Ash had told her that they needed to discuss her friendships. He urged her to reconsider her relationship with 𝗏𝗏𝗏, who seemed to want nothing to do with her and only sought to hurt her. Despite Izumi's hesitations, Ash firmly explained that 𝗏𝗏𝗏 had abandoned her and caused her pain, questioning whether it was right to pick on those weaker than oneself. His words struck deep, making her feel the weight of her experiences with 𝗏𝗏𝗏's bullying over the years. Ash had comforted her, holding her close as she sobbed, expressing her frustration about 𝗏𝗏𝗏's hatred for her despite her lack of control over her circumstances. He advised her to distance herself from 𝗏𝗏𝗏, stating that he would never learn until it was too late. As he held her, Izumi let out all the pain she had endured from 𝗏𝗏𝗏's emotional and physical abuse. Ash reassured her that Bakugo was not her friend or rival anymore. He was an enemy, and she needed to grow stronger. As Izumi reflected on Ash's words, she realized that Bakugo was not her friend but rather a bully she had tried to protect. With determination, she vowed to show him that she was no longer weak and slowly fell asleep in Ash's embrace. Izumi gently kissed 𝐼𝐻𝐸's head and wiped her tears as 𝗏𝐻𝐽 brought out the food, placing it on the 4 small tables. They enjoyed fried rice, chicken, cooked vegetables, and a small plate of applesauce for 𝐼𝐻𝐸. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 hoped they would enjoy the meal, and it was evident that she had been taking care of herself, appearing more fit and slightly taller. Izumi smiled as she began to feed 𝐼𝐻𝐸, who looked at the spoon before glancing at Ash and 𝗏𝐻𝐽, who were enjoying their own meals. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 took a bite of the food, her eyes lighting up with delight. The evening was filled with laughter and movies as they ate together, discovering that 𝐼𝐻𝐸's favorite food was apples. 𝗏𝐻𝐽's alarm clock blared from her bedroom, prompting her to get up and turn it off. As she walked into the living room, she was met with a heartwarming sight. Izumi was hugging 𝐼𝐻𝐸 protectively in her sleep, and 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was curled up, hugging back. Ash had his arms wrapped around both girls, resembling a loving family. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 couldn't resist capturing the moment and took a few pictures. She thought to herself that she would take a few pictures before waking them up. After snapping at least 12 photos, she walked over to Izumi and gently shook her shoulder, announcing that it was time for school. After a few moments, Izumi began to stir, yawning and rubbing her eyes. She smiled down at 𝐼𝐻𝐸, but then felt someone's arms around her and 𝐼𝐻𝐸. Turning slightly, she realized it was Ash, and her face flushed a deep red. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 noticed this and giggled, helping Izumi get up without waking Ash or 𝐼𝐻𝐸. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 left 𝐼𝐻𝐸 with Ash, who held the child protectively in his sleep. Izumi looked back, unable to suppress her smile, and leaned down to kiss 𝐼𝐻𝐸's head softly before glancing at Ash. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 saw Izumi blush as she kissed Ash's cheek while he slept. Izumi then hurried to her room to grab her clothes and dashed into the restroom to shower and get ready. As she showered, she contemplated confessing her feelings to the man who had been helping her control her newfound powers and encouraging her to stand up for herself. She resolved to tell him her feelings when they were alone, hoping no one would interrupt. After finishing her shower, she dried her hair, leaving it fluffy and curly. She recalled how Ash, 𝐼𝐻𝐸, and she had fallen asleep together like a family the night before. Once dressed in her UA uniform, which fit her well, she shook her head to clear her thoughts before heading out to the kitchen for breakfast. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 was beginning to wake up, rubbing her eyes and yawning. Slowly, she opened her eyes and realized she was still in the same place as yesterday, confirming that her freedom from the cruel man's grasp was real. Tears filled her eyes as she noticed she was in Ash's arms. Looking up at his peaceful face, she buried her face in his chest, and he responded by hugging her tightly, reassuring her that she was safe and loved. Izumi entered the room and smiled at the scene before her. She leaned down and kissed 𝐼𝐻𝐸's head gently, reminding them that it was almost time for breakfast. Both Ash and 𝐼𝐻𝐸 groaned in response, causing 𝗏𝐻𝐽 and Izumi to giggle. Ash stood up, carrying 𝐼𝐻𝐸, and made his way to the kitchen, where he placed her in a chair before sitting down beside her. Izumi took a seat on 𝐼𝐻𝐸's other side, while 𝗏𝐻𝐽 sat across from them. Izumi felt a sense of happiness as she observed them, thinking they looked like a real family. Out of the blue, Ash asked Izumi who she thought wanted to make her an intern for a week, piquing 𝐼𝐻𝐸's curiosity. Izumi shrugged, pulling 𝐼𝐻𝐸 onto her lap with a smile, assuring her that she would be safe. She gently wiped 𝐼𝐻𝐸's face with a napkin. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 checked the time and announced that she needed to get to work, reminding Izumi to start heading to school. Ash then offered to take 𝐼𝐻𝐸 shopping for clothes and toys, using his powers to levitate the dishes into the sink before putting on his shoes and grabbing the spare house keys. He told them they would be out for a few hours. 𝐼𝐻𝐸 waved at Izumi and 𝗏𝐻𝐽, saying goodbye in her adorable voice. While Ash appeared unaffected, internally he was a flustered mess. Izumi, however, was frozen in place, her cheeks flushed, while 𝗏𝐽 wore a mischievous smile that Izumi found unsettling. When Izumi asked her mother what was so funny, 𝗏𝐽 playfully inquired about when the wedding would be. Izumi's blush deepened as she hurriedly grabbed her bag, insisting she had to leave for school to see who wanted her as an intern. She bolted out the door, sprouting wings to fly away faster. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲 laughed as she gathered her keys and purse, locking the door behind her. Meanwhile, Izumi soared high above the clouds, still blushing from her mother's teasing. She wondered why her mother had to say that. Although she liked Ash, he was 800 years older than her, despite looking only 18, and she doubted he felt the same way. As she approached Yue, she noticed the heads turning in her direction during the sports festival, realizing her uniform accentuated her figure. She had curves in all the right places, a fit and slightly muscular body, and a bright smile that Ash adored, even if she was unaware of it. As she descended slowly toward the gates of Yue, many waved at her or congratulated her on being the sports festival champion. Something that she would never boast about, as that would only invite resentment and arrogance, leading to her ultimate downfall. Ash was still carrying 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿, who gazed at everything around her with wonder in her eyes. Her adorable expression made Ash smile and affectionately call her his little snowball, which brought her joy inside. As they approached the mall to find her new clothes, shoes, and toys, Ash asked 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿 what her favorite color was. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿 took on a thoughtful pose, making Ash chuckle quietly. After a moment, she replied that her favorite colors were blue and red. Curious, Ash inquired why she liked those colors. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿 explained that blue was his color and red was her mother's shoe color, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Ash chuckled again and guided her to the children's clothing section, encouraging her to pick out whatever she wanted. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿 looked up at him, timidly asking if she could have more than one item. Ash's heart warmed at her shyness, and he smiled reassuringly, telling her she could choose as many as she liked. 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿's eyes sparkled as she selected 2 outfits in red and blue, along with apple-themed pajamas. She also picked out several more pieces in light blue, red, white, pink, and purple. Spotting 2 pairs of shoes, one red and one blue, she looked at Ash with her big, expressive eyes. Unable to deny her request, Ash picked up the shoes for her and carried her selections as they headed to the cashier. After paying for everything, which amounted to $237.97, Ash thought about how Izumi would likely be thrilled to see 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿 dressed up. They left the clothing store and set off to find a toy store. Meanwhile, Izumi listened intently to Aizawa, who instructed the class not to wear their hero suits unless permitted by their intern and to always heed their advice. The class nodded in agreement, except for 𝗂𝐵𝐸, who was still upset about his recent loss in the festival. Aizawa then mentioned that the voting results were unusually concentrated this year, which puzzled the students until he revealed the numbers. Izumi was astonished by the number of votes she received, realizing she had a significant decision to make. Turning to see Uraraka excitedly shaking Iida's shoulder, she heard Uraraka exclaiming about their votes. Iida, despite his inner turmoil, tried to calm her down so they could see who had chosen them. Izumi sensed Iida's frustration and knew she needed to select someone close to Hosu to prevent him from acting impulsively. As she reviewed the list of heroes who wanted her as an intern, Izumi's years of being called a nerd proved beneficial. She could process information quickly, reading at an impressive speed, which made her decision-making easier. The others were also focused on their choices. 𝗟𝗓 commented on 𝗂𝐵𝐸𝐿's unexpected popularity, which provoked 𝗂𝐵𝐸𝐿's fiery response, only to be interrupted by Izumi, who calmly asked them to be quiet as she continued reading. Back with Ash and 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿, they wandered through the toy section, where 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿's awe drew smiles from onlookers. She spotted a green rabbit, a red stuffed dog, and a blue jackal. Letting go of Ash's hand, she dashed to the toys, holding them up and asking if she could have them. Ash felt a rush of affection at her excitement and, despite some people mistaking him for her older brother, he confirmed that she could have the toys. After purchasing the toys, Ash noticed it was time to eat. He suggested they head to the food court, carrying all the bags and 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐿 with ease. Meanwhile, Izumi weighed her options between 𝗟𝗏 and Miruko, placing the other papers back on Aizawa's desk. In the lounge, 𝐼𝐬𝐿 and 𝐶EMENTOS were enjoying coffee when 𝐶EMENTOS noticed something coming through the fax machine. After reading the paper, he informed 𝐼𝐬𝐿 that Izumi had received another offer. 𝐼𝐬𝐿's expression shifted to one of concern as he realized who it was from, prompting him to rush to 1A to speak with Izumi. Izumi explained to Momo that she was primarily a celebrity and only a search and rescue hero, noting that Momo had only seen her first form, which was inspired by pro-hero Iwabumi. Momo, still feeling downcast after her defeat during the festival, asked if it could really be that bad. Izumi sighed and placed a reassuring hand on Momo's shoulder, encouraging her to return to the pile of offers and look for others that could help her more. With a firm tone, she urged Momo to keep searching. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and All Might entered in his muscular form. He requested that young Midoriya follow him, trying to maintain his composure despite his shaking legs. Izumi stood up and walked out with All Might, who explained that an old teacher of his, knowledgeable about One for All, wanted to intern her to help her harness that power to a greater extent. All Might's nervousness puzzled Izumi, but she recognized the opportunity to enhance her abilities. As All Might had a brief moment of panic, she thanked him and signed the form he provided. Afterward, Izumi returned to the classroom, catching the attention of her classmates as she submitted the form. One of her friends, a cheerful pink-haired girl, asked who she would be interning with. Izumi proudly announced that she would be training under 𝗟𝗏, the teacher of All Might, Aizawa, Midnight, and Present Mike. The room fell silent for a moment before Denki erupted in disbelief, exclaiming that she would be trained by the teacher's teacher. This reaction caused a ripple of excitement among their peers, while Bakugo, filled with frustration, decided to intern under the number 5 pro hero, Best Genius. Izumi, slightly confused by the commotion, shrugged it off and confirmed her choice before handing the papers back to Aizawa. Shortly after, Momo also submitted her form. When Izumi inquired about Momo's internship, Momo blushed, realizing she almost missed an important opportunity. She revealed that she would be interning under 𝗟𝗏, which caused several students to gasp in surprise. Once everyone had chosen their agencies, they submitted their forms, and Midnight entered the room. She announced that it was time for the students to select their hero names, emphasizing the importance of making them memorable. Except for Izumi, who would be known as Green Angel since that was already how the public referred to her. Aizawa, settling into his sleeping bag, encouraged them to take their time with the decision. One by one, the students began to announce their hero names. Yuga Aoyama became Naval Laser, Can't Stop Twinkling, Mina Ashido chose Pinky, Tsuyu Ajui became 𝗟𝗏𝗙, Tenya Ida was named Ingenium, and so on. Izumi proudly declared her name as Green Angel, while Momo chose the name Creati. Once they finished, school was dismissed, allowing the students 2 days to spend with their families. Izumi felt excited to see Ash, her mother, and Eri. As she walked with her friends, she noticed Ida's tense demeanor. She expressed her concern, urging him to reconsider his plans regarding the hero killer. Ida, caught off guard by her insight, forced a smile, but Izumi could sense his underlying rage and determination. With a sigh, Izumi sprouted her wings and bid farewell to her friends, promising to see them in a week as she took to the skies. She arrived home shortly after, greeted by the smiling faces of Ash and Eri. It warmed her heart to see Eri happy, and she returned the smile to the girl who affectionately called her Mama. Time passed, and soon Class 1A found themselves in front of trains that would take them to their respective agencies. Aizawa reminded them not to wear their hero outfits unless permitted by their mentors. The students nodded in agreement and boarded the trains. Izumi closed her eyes, a serene smile on her face as she thought about Eri, reassuring herself that she would be home in a week. After a few hours, the train stopped in front of an old complex building. She knocked on the door, but when no one answered, she cautiously opened it to find 𝗟𝗏 on the ground. A moment of panic surged through her, but she quickly sensed his life force, which relieved her. She approached him, advising him to get off the dirty floor and warning him not to lie, as she could sense the truth. 𝗟𝗏 rose, surprised by her confidence. He introduced himself, and after a brief exchange, he acknowledged her intelligence and assured her that he wouldn't hold back in her training just because she was a girl. Izumi felt a sense of relief and determination as she prepared for the challenges ahead. "When do we start?" she asked him. "Now," he exclaimed, bouncing off the walls. Izumi dropped her things and activated her One for All at 25% to keep up with him, and their training began immediately. Izumi was currently on the ground, having been knocked down by 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿 during their training session. Despite her speed and strength, 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿's moves were nearly unpredictable, making it difficult for her to land a solid hit. However, she had managed to increase her power to nearly 29%. While it may not seem like much, the difference in her speed and strength was significant. 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻𝐿 landed next to Izumi, calmly informing her that they would be taking a break. "Alright, Gaki, that's enough training for now. Get some rest because later we are going to go villain hunting," he said, as casually as if discussing the weather. Izumi sat up, feeling tired. "But where will we find villains?" she asked, leaning against a damaged wall. "We will be going to Hosu," he replied, starting to prepare a quick meal. As Izumi contemplated this, her phone rang. She got up, reached into her bag, and answered it. "Hello," she said. "Hi, Mama," came the cheerful voice of her adopted child 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻. Izumi smiled softly. "Hi, little angel. How are you?" she asked, catching 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻's attention. "I'm okay, but Papa is sleeping right now because some people were. I forgot the word. It starts with an H. Harassment. I can't pronounce it," 𝐼𝐻 explained. "Harassment," Izumi suggested. 𝐼𝐻 beamed. "Yeah, that. People in weird costumes were trying to fight him or hire him, but Papa made them all go away," she said, sitting next to her sleeping father. Izumi paused for a moment. "I see. Well, I'll talk to your Papa when I get back, so don't worry. Also, are you behaving for your Nana?" she asked, causing 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 to nearly choke on his drink as he turned to Izumi, surprised by the child's maturity. "Is this kid a parent at this age?" he thought, intrigued by Izumi's growing complexity. "But Nana said she was going to make an apple pie after I finish dinner. Oh, and Papa is teaching me how to read," 𝐼𝐻 added. "That's great, Snow Angel. I'll see you by the end of the week. Love you and give your Papa a hug for me," Izumi said, picking up her bag and heading to change her clothes. 𝐼𝐻 nodded, even though her mama couldn't see it. "Okay, Mama. Love you, bye," she replied. "Bye," Izumi said as they hung up. After changing into her hero suit, she lay down on the bed, her thoughts drifting to her family and how everything had changed for the better since the USJ incident. She felt confident in her ability to protect others and was proud to be a loving daughter. Her mother didn't have to work as often anymore, thanks to Ash helping with their financial issues. She had seen past his cold demeanor, realizing she had developed feelings for someone who was literally 800 years older than her. But does he love me? What if he backs off because I am much younger, or that I'm not appealing or good enough? She thought, shaking her head to dispel the negativity. No, stop thinking so negatively. You have to try, and if you fail, at least you gave it a shot. She resolved, determination filling her expression. She walked out of the room to find 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 waiting for her. "Finally done with your call with your little snow angel?" he asked calmly. Izumi froze for a moment before responding. "Yes, I am. So how are we going to reach Hosu?" she inquired as they exited Torino's home. "We're taking a bullet train," 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 said as they made their way to the train station. While heading to their destination, Izumi pulled out her phone and texted her friend Ida, checking in on him. 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 looked a bit annoyed. "Youth these days. All you kids do is stay on your phones," he remarked. Izumi sweat dropped at his comment but didn't have a chance to respond as the bullet train arrived. They boarded the train, which would take them to Hosu within the hour. Many passengers recognized Izumi, especially the children, who were excited to see her. One little girl, brave enough to let go of her mother's hand, approached Izumi while she was checking her phone. "Hello there," the little girl said, smiling up at Izumi, who knelt down to greet her. "Hello, little one. You should be with your parents," Izumi advised gently as the girl's mother hurried over. "I know, but I wanted to greet the Green Angel. You're so cool," the little girl exclaimed with a bright smile. Izumi giggled and patted the child's head softly. "Well, thank you, little one. Now go back to your mommy," she said, watching the child run back to her mother. Just as they settled down, 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 suddenly shouted, "Get down!" He quickly tackled a few civilians to the ground as something crashed into the train, sending Izumi into high alert. What crashed and shocked her? It was a 𝐼𝐻𝐬 holding a hero by his head. "A 𝐼𝐻𝐬," she exclaimed, but she quickly shook off her surprise and powered up. In an instant, Izumi found herself in front of the 𝐼𝐻𝐬, delivering a powerful punch that sent it flying away from the hero and out of the train. 𝗟𝗏 ordered her to help protect the civilians while he took care of the creature. Izumi nodded, her wings sprouting as she took off into the city, calling out to 𝗟𝗏 to stay safe as she soared through the air. As she flew, she noticed the chaos of flames engulfing the area. Stopping midair, she assessed the situation and determined she needed to extinguish some of the fire. With a determined flap of her wings, she created a massive gust that successfully cleared the flames. Spotting a 𝐼𝐻𝐬 about to strike a hero, she shot toward it, landing a kick that sent it crashing through several buildings. She followed up by unleashing a barrage of aura spheres at the 𝐼𝐻𝐬, her battle cry echoing as she fought fiercely. Suddenly, she heard someone calling for Iida, which caught her attention. Turning, she saw Manuel but couldn't find Iida anywhere. Concerned, she thought about where he might have gone. Realizing he could be in danger, she flapped her wings and took to the skies, using her aura to locate him. She sensed 3 aura signatures, 2 were injured, and 1 was completely fine. Knowing what that meant, she flew to their location in record time. When she arrived, she saw 𝗟𝗓 poised to end Iida's life. In a split second, she intervened, punching 𝗟𝗓 away from Iida. Turning to the unfamiliar hero beside Iida, she asked if he was okay and if he could move. Iida, struggling to respond, explained that he couldn't move due to 𝗟𝗓's quirk. Izumi was taken aback but quickly focused on the task at hand. She discreetly sent out her location to anyone nearby, aware that she couldn't carry both Iida and the hero to safety. Determined, she declared that she would protect both Iida and the hero. 𝗟𝗓, unfazed, taunted them, but Izumi stood her ground, revealing her confidence in the face of danger. She launched a series of jabs and kicks at 𝗟𝗓, who attempted to counter with his sword. Izumi skillfully dodged his attack, and when he tried to regain distance, she unleashed green spheres that struck him, causing a significant explosion that slammed him into a wall. As 𝗟𝗓 struggled to rise, he was hit by fire and soon trapped in ice. Todoroki, appearing at the entrance of the alleyway, commented on the situation, acknowledging Izumi's efforts. Grateful, she nodded in thanks before narrowly avoiding a knife thrown by 𝗟𝗓, who had broken free from the ice. Iida shouted that this was his fight, claiming the name Ingenium, but Todoroki calmly pointed out the irony of Iida's newfound vengeance. Izumi seized the moment, landing a powerful punch to 𝗟𝗓's stomach, causing him to cough up blood. With a swift kick to his head, she knocked him unconscious, shocking everyone present. Breathing from the exertion, she watched as Iida and Native began to rise, 𝗟𝗓's quirk fading with his defeat. They quickly worked together to tie up 𝗟𝗓 and disarm him of his numerous blades. As they exited the alleyway, they were approached by 𝗟𝗏, who expressed surprise at their success in capturing 𝗟𝗓. Before they could discuss further, other heroes arrived, astonished to see the infamous villain subdued. 𝗟𝗏, arriving on the scene, growled in frustration at losing the opportunity for glory. Suddenly, a screech filled the air as the 𝐼𝐻𝐬 dove toward Izumi. Remaining calm, she swung her arm upward, causing the 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to split in 2 and fly past her, leaving everyone in awe. With a green sword in hand that faded into her body, she declared that no one should mess with her. Meanwhile, Shigaraki watched from a distance, frustrated by Izumi's interference and vowing revenge. 𝗟𝗏's anger grew, knowing that Izumi would receive credit for the victory, especially since she had permission to use her quirk in public. A hero called for medical assistance, ensuring everyone received the care they needed. Later, in the hospital, Izumi and Todoroki kept Iida company as he recovered from his injuries. They watched the news, which reported on Izumi's heroic actions the previous night. The broadcast highlighted how she not only helped extinguish the fire but also defeated 2 of the 3 monsters that attacked Hosu and protected her fellow students from the hero killer. A newswoman announced the raw recording of the fight, causing Izumi to do a spit take. Todoroki appeared frozen while Iida looked as if he had seen a ghost. Izumi stared at the television, contemplating what her family would think of her actions. She felt a wave of anxiety wash over her, thinking to herself that she was in so much trouble. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐮𝐬, Ash, and 𝐼𝐸 were watching the news. 𝐒𝐮𝐬's thoughts echoed Izumi's as she worried about her daughter's safety, feeling both scared and relieved that Izumi was unharmed. Ash, sipping his coffee calmly, felt a fire of determination brewing inside him. He noted that Izumi would need more rigorous training when she returned. 𝐼𝐸, concerned for her mother, glanced at Ash and noticed the phone beside him. She asked if they could call Izumi, prompting a soft smile from Ash as he agreed. Back with Izumi, she felt her phone vibrate and pulled it from her pocket, trembling with anxiety upon seeing Ash's FaceTime call. Todoroki and Iida noticed her shaking and exchanged worried glances. Iida asked if she was okay, just as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 entered the room with 𝗟𝗏 and a police chief. 𝗟𝗏 opened his mouth to speak but was interrupted by 𝗀𝗏. Izumi sighed and answered the call, greeting her family on the screen. 𝐼𝐸's voice came through, asking if she was all right, which startled her classmates, 𝗟𝗏, and the police chief. Izumi reassured 𝐼𝐸 that she was fine and not hurt, prompting 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to burst into tears. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 pleaded with her daughter to stop scaring her, expressing her fear for Izumi's safety. Izumi flinched slightly, not wanting to frighten her mother further, and assured her that everything was okay. Ash remained silent, allowing 𝐼𝐸 and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to speak. He thought that at least this distraction kept them from focusing on the news. He changed the channel and remarked that it was good Izumi wasn't hurt, explaining that her location message made sense now. He added that they would see her by the end of the week, while 𝐼𝐸 continued to hold the phone, eager to talk to her mother. Izumi smiled softly at the screen, saying she would see them soon but needed to go as the police chief was there to speak with them. 𝐼𝐸 and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 said their goodbyes, while Ash simply nodded. After hanging up, Izumi turned to the others in the room. 𝗟𝗏, the police chief, Shoto, and Iida were all taken aback by the revelation that she was a mother at just 15 years old. Iida exclaimed in shock, asking how she could be a mother. Izumi explained that 𝐼𝐸 was adopted. She and Ash had found her while grocery shopping and had intervened to protect her from someone who was causing her distress. The chief of police acknowledged the situation, stating that although Izumi had broken the law, they could not punish her due to public perception. He noted that she was seen as a hero, which was a positive outcome, but she had used her powers without permission. Todoroki, filled with anger, questioned the chief's reasoning, arguing that they should not have left anyone in danger. The chief countered that they should have sought professional help instead of taking matters into their own hands. This only fueled Todoroki's frustration. As he moved to confront the chief, Izumi intervened, shaking her head at him. Reluctantly, he returned to his seat beside Iida. Izumi turned back to the chief, who continued speaking. He clarified that since Izumi had been given permission to use her quirk, she would not face punishment, and the credit for the incident would go to her. The boys would also not be punished since the focus was on her and the hero killer. He thanked them for keeping the town safe. Todoroki remarked that the chief should have started with that information. Iida apologized for the trouble they had nearly caused. Izumi shrugged it off, expressing that she would have acted the same way even without permission, as saving a life was worth any consequences. She quoted her teacher, saying that saving one life could lead to saving many others. With that, she left with 𝐼𝐻𝐬, leaving everyone in the room stunned by her words. As the week drew to a close, Izumi prepared to head home, thanking 𝐼𝐻𝐬 for his help in training her quirk. She felt confident, able to hold 33% of her power without much trouble. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 grinned and reminded her to take care of herself and her family, teasing her about being nervous about the intensity of her training. Izumi stiffened at the comment but nodded, and 𝗀𝗏 laughed as she departed for the bullet train. On the train, people congratulated her, calling her a true hero, which filled her with joy. However, a lingering sense of impending doom still shadowed her thoughts. As she approached home, Izumi hoped that her mother and Ash didn't have any punishments waiting for her. She thought about how Ash would surely be upset with her for her reckless actions, tears streaming down her face. Finally reaching her home, she took a deep breath, used her key, and entered. To her surprise, Her mother was the only one there. Izumi nervously greeted her, asking where Ash and 𝐼𝐸 were. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 sat calmly on the couch, sipping her tea and locking eyes with Izumi, which sent a shiver of apprehension through her. Setting her cup down, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 informed her that Ash and 𝐼𝐸 were at the dorms, preparing the room they would share. She reassured Izumi that she wouldn't be punishing her, leaving all of that to Ash, who had plans for her training during school. The thought of Ash's potential punishment filled Izumi with dread, prompting a chuckle from 𝐼𝐻𝐬 as she noticed her daughter's fearful expression. Izumi felt a wave of relief wash over her, but also a sense of impending doom. Sighing, Izumi mentioned that she would rest before returning to school the next day, knowing Ash wouldn't greet her with a smile. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 observed her daughter's expression and, instead of asking, stated that Izumi was in love with Ash. This caught Izumi off guard, leaving her blushing and speechless, which confirmed 𝐼𝐻𝐬's assumption. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 smiled, pleased that her daughter had found someone special. Meanwhile, Ash and 𝐼𝐸 were busy setting up their dorm room, which was larger than the others and contained 2 beds. Ash couldn't believe he had agreed to share a bed with Izumi, but he decided not to dwell on it. After finishing the beds, he turned to 𝐼𝐸, asking if she was ready to decorate her side. 𝐼𝐸's bright smile lit up the room, and she eagerly agreed. She dashed to a bag and pulled out apple-themed blankets and pillowcases, making her bed and filling the space with joy. Ash smiled at 𝐼𝐸's happiness before setting up his own bed with a blue and green theme. Once satisfied, he and 𝐼𝐸 decorated the room with All Might figurines and posters, along with some fun decorations like unicorns and cartoon characters. Ash then retrieved 3 guitars from his collection, feeling a sense of pride in their new space. He picked up 𝐼𝐸 and headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner, playfully calling her Snowball as he placed her on the counter. Excitedly, 𝐼𝐸 joined in as they gathered ingredients for a meal. Ash decided on eggs, carne asada, onions, tomatoes, and a jalapeno, along with apple juice for 𝐼𝐸. He placed a chef's hat on her head, making her giggle with delight. After a fun cooking session, Ash set down a big plate for himself and a smaller one for 𝐼𝐸, who eagerly nodded at the delicious food. They sat together, enjoying their meal, with 𝐼𝐸 savoring every bite and Ash chuckling at her enthusiasm. As they ate, Ash turned on the TV to entertain 𝐼𝐸 with cartoons. He silently vowed to ensure her childhood was filled with love and protection, especially from anyone who might upset her. After finishing their meal, Ash cleaned up and noticed it was still early. He decided to let 𝐼𝐸 draw and watch cartoons until bedtime. He picked her up and led her to the common room, where her coloring books awaited. Once settled, 𝐼𝐸 immediately began to color while Ash turned the TV back on. Meanwhile, Izumi had just finished dinner with her mother and was cleaning the dishes, though she seemed lost in thought. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 noticed her distraction and asked what was wrong. Izumi insisted she was fine, but her mother wasn't convinced. With a sigh, Izumi expressed her fears about Ash not loving her back, feeling insecure about their age difference and his life experience. 𝐼𝐻𝐬, recalling her own past heartache, comforted her daughter with a hug, assuring her that Ash cared for her deeply. She revealed that she had convinced Ash to buy 2 beds for them to share, which made Izumi blush and smile brightly. Grateful, she thanked her mother repeatedly before 𝐼𝐻𝐬 encouraged her to get some rest. Izumi nodded and headed to her room, feeling a mix of hope and excitement for what lay ahead. She noticed that a few of her All Might posters were missing, along with 𝐼𝐸's toys. After that, she climbed into bed and fell asleep. The next morning in Class 1A, laughter echoed from Kirishima, Kaminari, 𝐼𝐸, and Mina as they teased Bakugo about his unusual hairstyle, which only irritated him further. Kirishima, holding his phone, recorded the moment, unable to contain his amusement. Bakugo shouted in frustration, claiming he had tried to fix it but it just wouldn't cooperate. As he yelled, his hair exploded back into its signature spiky style, prompting Kirishima to exclaim in delight. Izumi entered the classroom, smiling at the scene of Bakugo's hair transformation. She sighed, amused, and made her way to her desk. Soon after, Ida and Todoroki joined the class, and they all waited for Aizawa, who appeared from behind his desk. He greeted the class with his usual laid-back demeanor, reminding them about the importance of following rules, especially regarding their training. He informed them that their dorms were ready and that 2 new guests would be joining them, hinting that they might recognize them from a previous encounter. As they followed Aizawa to the dorms, Izumi asked if the new arrivals were already there, which puzzled most of her classmates. Aizawa confirmed that they were and mentioned that Ash would be keeping a close eye on them, especially after their reckless encounter with a villain. He then added that today would be a relaxed day, as Ash intended to train them physically without relying on their quirks. Upon entering the common room, they were greeted by Ash and 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was busy drawing at the coffee table. Some students felt a bit uneasy around Ash, recalling the incident at USJ. Aizawa introduced them as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 𝐾𝐞𝐭 and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 𝐾𝐞𝐭, explaining that Ash preferred to be called Ash and that 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was his adopted daughter. Just then, Bakugo charged at Ash, ready to attack, but Kirishima shouted a warning. In a swift motion, Ash disarmed Bakugo, stopping him in his tracks. He then countered with a series of precise moves that left Bakugo momentarily incapacitated, showcasing his skill and strength. Ash's demeanor shifted as he addressed the class, warning them that he would not tolerate any disrespect. He also reminded them to be cautious around 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was still learning to trust others. Aizawa then pointed out that 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was shyly hiding behind Ash's leg. Ash suggested that Aizawa show the students around while 𝐼𝐻𝐬 returned to her drawing, and Aizawa complied, leading them through the dorms. He explained that the dorms were divided by gender, except for Izumi's room, which raised some questions among the students. When Todoroki inquired about the exception, Aizawa clarified that Ash and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 would be staying with Izumi, as they trusted her the most. This revelation surprised everyone, and when they turned to find Izumi, she had already slipped away to be with Ash and 𝐼𝐻𝐬. In the common room, Izumi embraced 𝐼𝐻𝐬, affectionately rubbing her cheek against her. She expressed how much she had missed her little snow angel and asked if she had been good while she was away. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 giggled in response, sharing that she had helped Ash with cooking. Ash smiled softly at the scene, feeling a sense of warmth. He joined them, giving Izumi a quick kiss on the cheek, which made her blush. He praised her for her bravery in facing the hero killer but warned her that if she ever did something so reckless again, her training would be significantly tougher. Izumi nodded, understanding the seriousness of his words. As they continued to talk, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 announced that she had finished her drawing. She proudly showed it to Ash and Izumi, revealing a picture of a child holding hands with scribbled versions of her parents, topped with the words, "My family." Both Ash and Izumi beamed at her artwork, promising to display it on the fridge for everyone to see. Just then, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 noticed the other students returning to the common room. She pointed out that the strangers were back, causing Class 1A to freeze in place. Almost immediately, Izumi's female classmates squealed at how adorable 𝐼𝐻𝐬 sounded. Mina rushed over, excited to learn more about 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and her relationship with Izumi, who shyly mentioned wanting to spend time with 𝐼𝐻𝐬 after being away for a week. As Ash placed his hand on Izumi's waist, it served as a protective gesture, especially towards Mineta, who was eyeing them with a mix of fear and curiosity. Momo, noticing Ash's hand, asked Izumi if she and Ash were in a relationship, leaving Izumi blushing and her friends both shocked and happy at the revelation. Well, except for Todoroki, who started to develop feelings for Izumi after the sports festival, Izumi struggled to finish her sentence. Suddenly, Ash leaned in and kissed her deeply. The surprise left Izumi momentarily frozen, her cheeks turning bright red. Her friends cheered her on, celebrating her newfound affection. Uraraka, her best friend, exclaimed that Izumi had found love. When Ash pulled away, he noticed 𝐼𝐻𝐬's happiness and the excitement of Izumi's friends, except for Mineta and Todoroki. Ochako asked if Ash would be training them from now on, to which Ash nodded. He explained that he had a child to care for and that they needed to catch up to Izumi's level of strength and speed. A mischievous glint in his eyes sent a shiver down everyone's spine. Kaminari joked about losing their free will, prompting laughter from Mina. Izumi, however, warned them that Ash's training would be intense, making their previous experiences seem like child's play. This caused her friends to gulp in fear. Izumi reassured them that they had time to relax before the training began the next day. She stood up, announcing her intention to change, and Momo followed suit, with everyone else doing the same. After a while, they returned to find Ash and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 on the couch, watching the humorous cat and mouse cartoon, Tom and Jerry. Izumi sat next to Ash, leaning against him as he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. He whispered something in her ear that made her blush and smile. He claimed her as his, expressing their bond. Izumi felt a rush of happiness at being so cherished, kissing his cheek, which sparked jealousy in Todoroki and Bakugo, who had just returned. Ash, however, remained unfazed by their reactions. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 stood up and headed upstairs, which puzzled everyone except Ash, who calmly remarked that she was getting his guitar. This revelation surprised Izumi and 𝐾𝐞𝐭, who asked if he really had guitars. Ash confirmed with a nod. Bakugo teased him, claiming he was probably terrible at playing, with Todoroki silently agreeing, harboring his own resentment toward Ash for being close to Izumi. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 soon returned, holding a guitar that looked both new and old, captivating everyone's attention. With innocent eyes, she asked Ash to sing the song from the previous night. Ash smiled and began tuning the guitar to get the perfect pitch. As he played, the lyrics spoke of light in darkness and the journey of life. Izumi reflected on her growth and how far she had come. Mina felt pumped for the upcoming training, recalling how often she, Kaminari, and 𝐼𝐻𝐬 enjoyed these moments together. The song resonated with Momo, Toru, and Tsuyu, each relating to the themes of comfort and responsibility in their lives. The boys, including Kirishima, Todoroki, Bakugo, and Ida, felt energized by the music, readying themselves for the challenges ahead. As the song continued, the atmosphere shifted, and the girls began to dance around, with 𝐼𝐻𝐬 joining in joyfully. The boys couldn't help but smile at the sight, even Todoroki and Bakugo cracked small smiles. Aizawa leaned against the wall, listening to Ash's performance, while the energy in the room grew. When Ash finished, the room erupted in applause, except for Aizawa, Bakugo, and Todoroki. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 rushed to Ash with a radiant smile, nearly blinding Aizawa. She excitedly asked if he could teach her to play music like that one day. Ash chuckled and gently patted her head, promising that he would teach her when she was older, making 𝐼𝐻𝐬 cheer with delight. Izumi took her phone out to capture a picture before sitting down next to Ash again. She looked him in the eye with an unreadable expression and asked when he was going to tell her that he could play guitar. Ash, who had faced death since he was only 10, felt an unexpected wave of fear wash over him. He quickly responded that he planned to show her after he finally brought the rest of his belongings out of the temple he had sealed himself in all those years ago. The surprise on everyone's faces was evident until they noticed Izumi's unreadable expression, which conveyed everything they needed to know. With a smile, she acknowledged his response, causing Ash to sweat at the sudden shift in her emotions. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 giggled at her father nearly getting into trouble. Just then 𝐼𝐻𝐬's stomach grumbled, and she looked at her parents, expressing her hunger. Ash suggested they start making food, and as he stood up, Izumi followed his lead, with 𝐼𝐻𝐬 in his arms. They walked to the kitchen, and Izumi excitedly declared that it would be a feast that night. She grabbed an apron for herself and one for 𝐼𝐻𝐬. An hour later, the dining table was filled with food that made everyone's mouth water, even though Bakugo and Todoroki would deny it to their graves. Izumi, with her back turned, asked Mr. Aizawa if he was joining them. Everyone but Ash was confused until they heard a chair being pulled out and saw their teacher sitting down. His response was all the confirmation they needed, and the students followed their teacher's lead. Ash calmly warned them to eat while they could, as tomorrow would bring challenges. Everyone expressed their gratitude for the meal and began to dig in. The next morning, everyone gathered in Gym Gamma. Ash stood in front of them in the blue suit they had first seen him wear during the USJ incident. He announced that they would learn what true harsh training was, with no breaks unless he allowed them. If anyone took a break, the entire class would have to restart their training with double the effort. He instructed them to run 10 laps around the gym, adding another 10 if more breaks occurred. His stern tone instilled fear in the class, and they were not alone. Class 1B and 𝐶INSO were with them, equally aware of the challenge ahead. Ash declared that their training started now, and he increased the gravity around everyone, making it 3 times harder for all except Izumi, whose gravity was 12 times heavier, forcing her to kneel as she refused to fall. The others struggled on the ground, overwhelmed by the pressure. 𝗀𝐿 exclaimed in disbelief at the crushing weight, and he wasn't alone. Everyone else felt the same. Izumi, determined, forced herself to stand and approached a concrete pillar, beginning to punch and kick it with all her might. Ash encouraged them to rise and continue their training. Ash's voice cut through the air, urging the students to get moving. Alarmed, they began to rise one by one. Ochako was the first to stand, followed closely by Tsuyu, Momo, and Ida, who all started running laps. The last to join were Todoroki, Bakugo, Kaminari, who had tripped and fallen, and finally Mineta, who was often the source of frustration for his classmates. While they ran, Izumi continued to strike the concrete pillar with determination. At the entrance, Nizu, Aizawa, and All Might observed the intense training session. Aizawa wore a satisfied grin as he watched the students push themselves to their limits. All Might, however, questioned the safety of such rigorous training under Aizawa's strict supervision. Nizu noted that since the students were not permitted to use their quirks, it was essential for them to develop their physical strength instead. He believed that even the harshest training was vital for their growth. Students from Class 1B were breathing but reluctant to stop due to the looming threat of punishment. Monoma, known for his abrasive personality, had intended to challenge their new teacher but found himself unable to do so as the gravity weighed heavily upon them. Soon, all the students approached their own pillars, beginning to punch and kick them with fervor. Bakugo and Todoroki exchanged glances, surprised to see that Izumi had nearly demolished her pillar. After an hour of relentless effort, Ash called for a break, allowing the students 30 minutes to relax and recover. Ash encouraged the students to regain their strength, and they all collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. Class 1A and B felt their muscles burning, finally acknowledging that the gravity had returned to normal. They experienced discomfort in their fists and legs. Izumi had endured even more intense training, having to destroy 8 pillars using only her physical strength. Aizawa, Nizu, All Might, and Vlad King, who had arrived during their training, were astonished by how much Ash had pushed them and how the students persevered, even when some wanted to stop. They were motivated by the thought of facing Ash's punishment. As Ash brought out a cooler and distributed bottles filled with blue juice designed to help mend muscles and bones, he encouraged the students to drink up. 𝗀𝐿 remarked that when he was told he would be thrown into hell, he didn't think it would be literal, as he eagerly drank the juice. Monoma continued to gulp down his drink, unable to speak. Kendo commented on Ash's reputation, expressing that if he had undergone such training, she could only imagine how strong his teachers must have been. Izumi chimed in, noting that while her classmates had experienced an increase in gravity of 3 times its normal level, she had endured 12 times the gravity. Her revelation shocked both her class and the sister class. Ash chuckled, reminding her that it was a consequence of taking on stains so recklessly. He handed her the last drink, which she gratefully accepted. After 30 minutes, the bell rang, prompting Class 1A and B to rush for the doors. Izumi stood up and gave Ash a kiss on the cheek before running off to catch up with her friends. Ash smiled as he watched the classmates run off, a mix of fear and relief evident on their faces. 𝗟𝐼 was walking around with her mother, Izumi, holding her hand as they explored the area. 𝗟𝐼 noticed strange decorations all around, including fake spiders, webs, tombstones, and zombies, which both amazed and frightened her. Seeing 𝗟𝐼's reaction, Izumi decided to buy some materials. They entered a dollar store near the school, looking for snacks like candy, chips, sodas, and juice. While shopping, Izumi had 𝗟𝐼 pick out her favorite colors of cloth: red, blue, and green. Izumi said they should pay for their items so she could prepare a little surprise for 𝗟𝐼, which made 𝗟𝐼 very happy. As they walked back to the dorms, they spotted a few kids in costumes with their families. Izumi picked up 𝗟𝐼 and sprouted her wings to fly home faster, arriving in seconds. 𝗟𝐼 exclaimed how amazing that was. Izumi laughed a bit before entering the dorms with 𝗟𝐼. She announced their return and placed the bags of snacks in the kitchen. Everyone except Ash, Bakugo, and Todoroki rushed over. Ash was in their room reading a book on poetry, Todoroki was being his usual solitary self, and Bakugo was, well, being Bakugo. Izumi then went upstairs with the soft cloth to make costumes for 𝐼𝐻𝐬, herself, and 𝐴𝐻, intending to persuade him to wear one too. She spent a couple of hours crafting the costumes. For 𝐼𝐻𝐬, she created a mix of her hero costume and 𝐴𝐻's suit, complete with a green hat featuring a red logo. Izumi called for 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to come and try on the costume. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 ran to her mother, excitement evident on her face. When she saw the costume, her happiness was palpable. Izumi handed it to her and instructed her to try it on, promising they would go out to collect candy afterward. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 dashed to her room to change. Izumi turned to 𝐴𝐻 and told him he would wear a costume too. 𝐴𝐻 looked up from his book, asking if he had any choice in the matter. Izumi shook her head, giving him a firm look. He sighed and picked up the ninja costume she had made for him, commenting that he liked it as he put the hood up. Izumi smiled, pleased that he liked the costume, though she felt a blush creeping up as he changed right in front of her. She thought to herself about how impressive he looked. Unbeknownst to her, 𝐴𝐻 was also taken aback as she changed into a Red Riding Hood costume she had made for herself. She admired her work in the mirror, but before she could turn to 𝐴𝐻, she felt his strong arms wrap around her waist, his warm breath sending a shiver down her spine. He softly teased her about not getting much sleep that night, which made her blush even more. Before she could respond, he leaned in for a kiss. They soon separated, waiting for 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to emerge. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 appeared in her costume, a delightful mix of red, blue, and green, inspired by Izumi's hero design. Both Izumi and 𝐴𝐻 smiled at how adorable she looked. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 announced her arrival with excitement. 𝐴𝐻 asked if she was ready to go, and she nodded eagerly. Izumi handed 𝐼𝐻𝐬 a Halloween bag she had made, complete with her initials to ensure it wouldn't be taken. She explained that when 𝐼𝐻𝐬 knocked on doors, she should say, "Trick or treat," to get candy, which filled 𝐼𝐻𝐬's eyes with stars. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 exclaimed they should go and ran out, making her parents chuckle. They locked the door behind them, and everyone in the common room noticed them in their costumes. 𝗟𝗏 asked if they were going trick-or-treating, and the small family nodded. The others exchanged glances before rushing to their rooms to dress up as well. The next day, the little family was seen sleeping in their dorm room. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 had decided to join her parents in bed so she wouldn't have to sleep alone. Izumi began to wake up to the sound of the alarm and tried to turn it off, but 𝐴𝐻 reached over and switched it off for her. When she turned around, she was greeted by the sight of 𝐻's impressive physique, causing her to blush and have a slight nosebleed. 𝐻 noticed and pointed it out, wiping the blood from her nose. This prompted Izumi to bolt for their personal bathroom. 𝐻 chuckled before getting up to wake 𝐼𝐻𝐬. He gently shook her and said it was time to wake up his little snow angel. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 yawned and rolled over, mumbling for 5 more minutes. 𝐻 laughed and mentioned that if she wanted to sit with her mother during class, she needed to get up. Those words instantly energized 𝐼𝐻𝐬, and she shot up, full of excitement. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 asked what they were waiting for, and 𝐻 laughed as he picked her up. He told her she needed to shower with her mother and get ready. He grabbed clothes for her and left 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to get Izumi's clothes, saying he would be downstairs making breakfast. He then pushed 𝐼𝐻𝐬 toward the shower to get ready with Izumi. 𝐻 then left for the kitchen, where he found Iida and Momo. He informed them that they needed to start making breakfast for the class since he was only preparing enough for 3 people. Upon hearing this, they began to cook alongside him. As they worked, Momo and Iida occasionally glanced at 𝐻, trying to decipher his thoughts. To them, he remained a mystery, except for Izumi, who seemed to understand him better. Suddenly, 𝐻 addressed them, expressing his discomfort with their constant staring, causing them to jump slightly. He then took 3 plates and served the breakfast he had prepared for himself, 𝐼𝐻𝐬, and Izumi, placing them on the table just as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 rushed in and eagerly took her seat, prompting a chuckle from 𝐻 at her enthusiasm. Izumi entered, struggling to fix her tie. 𝐻 noticed her difficulty and, with a sigh, walked over to assist her. She thanked him, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment, which made 𝐻 smirk in response. They both settled down on either side of 𝐼𝐻𝐬 and began to enjoy their breakfast. Soon, the rest of Class A gathered around the table as Momo and Iida set down plates filled with pancakes. Mina exclaimed her gratitude, and everyone began to eat. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 happily munched on bacon, eggs, waffles, and apple slices. Izumi, feeling quite hungry, finished her meal quickly. She thanked Ash as she washed her plate and leaned in to give him a kiss on the cheek. However, as he turned his head, they ended up kissing each other, leaving Izumi blushing and smiling widely. Ida called for them to keep their public displays of affection to a minimum, but his plea was ignored. Eventually, everyone finished their meals. Ash reminded 𝗟𝐼 to take care of herself and behave around others, to which she nodded. Meanwhile, the girls from classes A and B took pictures of 𝗟𝐼, who looked adorable in her own version of the UA uniform. Izumi then announced it was time to go, picking up 𝗟𝐼 and giving Ash a quick kiss on the lips before heading out. Ash returned inside to clean up, keeping himself busy. In Class 1A, Izumi entered while carrying 𝗟𝐼. Other students looked at them curiously, surprised to see Izumi with a little girl in her arms. She sat down at her desk with 𝗟𝐼 on her lap, mentioning that they would be having Hero 101 again, which Momo confirmed. Suddenly, the door swung open. All Might announced his arrival with a loud declaration, startling 𝗟𝐼. Izumi shot him a glare, noticing how frightened 𝗟𝐼 was, and All Might began to sweat nervously. Apologizing for scaring her, he reassured 𝗟𝐼, who simply nodded in response. Then instructed everyone to put on their hero suits, announcing they would be training in Field Gamma. He produced a small remote and pressed a button, revealing 21 slots. He mentioned that one slot was for 𝗟𝐼, made by Ash himself. Upon hearing this, 𝗟𝐼 eagerly moved forward to grab the only slot with her name on it, which made Izumi smile with happiness. All of her fellow classmates and friends followed her, and they saw All Might waiting for them. He expressed his satisfaction with their punctuality and explained the challenge ahead. There would be groups of 5 students racing from the fake city to reach him and 𝗟𝐼. The first to arrive would win. The first group was announced: Midoriya, 𝗟𝗍, Ashida, Sato, and Ida. With that, All Might and 𝗟𝐼 headed to the tallest building in the fake city, surrounded by pipes. Momo wondered who would win, and everyone seemed to agree that Midoriya was the likely victor. All Might signaled the start of the race, and the students took off. Everyone expected Izumi to sprout her wings, but they were surprised to see her using her quirk to navigate the pipes like a skilled ninja. This only fueled Bakugo's frustration, as he felt she was surpassing him. As Izumi stepped on a faulty pipe, she used it to propel herself toward All Might and 𝗟𝐼, reaching them first. 𝗟𝐼 exclaimed joyfully and ran to her mother, who couldn't help but laugh as she scooped her up into a warm hug. Izumi greeted 𝗟𝐼 affectionately before turning to All Might, who announced her victory in the training exercise. The other students took their places, feeling the fatigue of the day's activities. 𝗟𝐼 asked her aunties and uncles if they were tired, eliciting smiles from everyone. Kaminari remarked on the intensity of their training since Ash had joined. 𝗟𝗍 stretched and commented on how only a few had managed to break the training pillars. As they returned to the dorm, they found Ash relaxing, watching TV and sipping tea, with 3 tickets on the table. Izumi greeted him with affection, and he returned the gesture, sharing the news that he had won tickets to 𝐼𝐼land through a radio contest. The class erupted in excitement, but they held back their enthusiasm, not wanting to make things more challenging for Ash. Izumi received a text from All Might inviting her to 𝐼𝐼land, and she considered giving her ticket to her mother so they could all spend the day together. Ash pondered the idea before agreeing, and Izumi smiled, grateful for his support. 𝗟𝐼 proudly showed Ash her drawing, a charming depiction of their family. Ash praised her artwork before placing it on the fridge for everyone to admire. 𝗟𝐼 beamed with joy at her father's encouragement. Izumi returned from their room and hugged Ash from behind, catching his attention. She expressed her longing to spend time with him and 𝗟𝐼, mentioning that it was someone else's turn to cook dinner. As they made their way to the living room, some of the girls rushed to the kitchen to prepare the meal. Ash suggested they inform Izumi's mother about their plans for 𝐼𝐼land, and she nodded, taking out her phone to send a message. On the plane, Ash, 𝗏𝐼, and 𝗟𝐼 boarded a private jet Ash had acquired for personal use. Meanwhile, Izumi was on another plane with All Might, already en route to the island. She asked All Might where they would meet his friend, but before he could respond, a receptionist excitedly announced their arrival, drawing attention from enthusiastic fans. Izumi felt overwhelmed as fans approached her and 𝐼𝐻𝐷. While she graciously signed autographs for the younger fans, she politely declined the advances of those her age and older. After navigating through the crowd, they continued on their way. 𝐼𝐻𝐷 remarked on the eventful encounter, and they soon noticed a young girl bouncing toward them on a pogo stick. She called out to 𝐼𝐻𝐷, who caught her midair and embraced her warmly. 𝗟𝐿𝐼, the girl, expressed her joy at seeing 𝐼𝐻𝐷 again and mentioned how much she had grown. 𝐼𝐻𝐷 introduced her to Izumi, and they exchanged friendly greetings. Izumi felt a familiar presence nearby, sensing Ash's powerful aura as they continued their introductions. She turned around, confusing 𝐼𝐻𝐷 and Melissa until they saw Ash, 𝗟𝗓, and 𝗏𝐻𝐽. Ash greeted them simply as he approached, leaning down to give Izumi a quick kiss, which surprised 𝐼𝐻𝐷 and Melissa. 𝐼𝐻𝐷, taken aback, asked his successor if she was dating him. Izumi sighed and nodded, confirming that she had been dating Ash for over a week. This revelation shocked 𝐼𝐻𝐷 and Melissa but brought immense joy to 𝗏𝐻𝐽, who beamed with happiness. Noticing 𝗏𝐻𝐽's delight, Ash suggested they move on to unpack and prepare for the party. A few drones arrived to carry everyone's luggage, prompting 𝐼𝐻𝐷 to agree. Melissa then led the way, excitedly mentioning they were going to see her father. She picked up her pogo stick and pressed a button, transforming it into a tiny cube, which amazed 𝗟𝗓. They followed Melissa as she guided them to the large lab. As they walked, Melissa pointed out various sights, with 𝗟𝗓 particularly captivated and eager to explore. They soon entered the building and ascended a few floors. Melissa announced her arrival with a surprise for her father. David, who had been thanking his assistant Sam for their help, turned to see his daughter. He expressed surprise at her presence, having thought she would be in her lab. Melissa giggled and moved aside to reveal 𝐼𝐻𝐷, who greeted David with a large smile and laughter. David, shocked to see his old friend, stumbled back in disbelief. Sam, equally astonished, exclaimed that it was truly 𝐼𝐻𝐷. 𝐼𝐻𝐷 laughed again and rushed to David, lifting him in a warm embrace, expressing how long it had been since they last saw each other. He then introduced 𝗏𝐻𝐽, Izumi's mother, along with Ash and their adopted child, 𝗟𝗓, which astonished Melissa, David, and Sam. Melissa, eager to give everyone a tour, quickly agreed when David suggested it. As they left, David turned to Sam, thanking him for his help in the lab and advising him to take the rest of the day off, leaving Sam confused but compliant. Once Sam departed, 𝐼𝐻𝐷 and David went to a room to check on 𝐼𝐻𝐷's status, aware that he could only maintain his form for a limited time. Meanwhile, Melissa showcased an exhibit featuring gadgets designed for heroes. They soon reached a helmet designed for 𝗟𝗓, which displayed the locations of everyone around her, making her eyes light up with excitement. She exclaimed how cool it was, while arrows animatedly shot through the hearts of figures around her. Suddenly, a familiar female voice called out to Izumi, and they turned to see three girls from Class 8-1, Ochako, Momo, and 𝗏𝐿𝐽. Izumi expressed her happiness at seeing them, and 𝗏𝐽 explained how they had drawn straws for the extra tickets Momo had secured. Ash took the opportunity to introduce the girls to Melissa, sharing their hero names. Just then, Ash lifted 𝗟𝗓 onto his shoulders, and they heard a loud explosion, prompting them to rush to a nearby stadium. Upon arrival, they saw Kirishima finishing his turn, with a young woman announcing his impressive time. Bakugo soon entered the stadium, and after a dramatic start, he finished in first place, boasting about his time. Spotting Izumi and Ash in the crowd ignited his anger, and he shouted at them, demanding to know what they were doing there. Izumi remained unresponsive, which only fueled Bakugo's frustration. Surprising move, Izumi jumped over him and onto the field, startling everyone as they recognized the Green Angel. Ash smirked as he placed 𝗟𝗓 down. Izumi confirmed she was ready, and when the signal was given, she vanished, reappearing in the sky moments later as explosions erupted across the field, indicating that all the robots had been destroyed. The crowd erupted in cheers as the announcer declared a new record. Bakugo seethed with rage, but before he could react, Ash made his way down to the field. The crowd was puzzled by his decision to compete after Izumi's record-breaking performance. Once the robots were set, the announcer asked if he was ready, and Ash nodded confidently. When the signal was given, he pointed his finger, and in an instant all the robots were gone. The announcer, astonished, declared that Ash had set a new record, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Ash then returned to the stands to join Izumi and 𝗟𝐼𝐬𝐽 approached Ash, congratulating him on his achievement. Ash smiled softly in response, suggesting they explore more before preparing for the party, which everyone agreed to. For the next 3 hours, they explored everything they could before heading to their rooms. Izumi joined Melissa and the girls to get ready, while Ash and 𝗟𝐼𝐬 left early with 𝗟𝐼𝐬 to arrive ahead of time. 𝗟𝐼𝐬 wanted to spend quality time with her grandchild, while Ash sensed an ominous presence lingering nearby. Izumi, dressed in a stylish green sleeveless dress, made her way to the boys, who included Iida, Kaminari, and Minato. Bakugo and Kirishima were delayed, having gotten lost and forgotten their phones. Meanwhile, Ash reassured 𝗟𝐼𝐬 and 𝗟𝐼𝐬 to enjoy their food as villains began to infiltrate the party, brandishing weapons and causing tension in the air. One villain was about to point his gun at 𝗟𝐼𝐬 when a small knife suddenly pierced through his skull, leaving everyone bewildered about its origin. The leader commanded his crew to take the scientist while instructing the 3 remaining members to keep watch and prevent any trouble. They were on high alert, having already lost one man. Unbeknownst to them, a group of young heroes was en route to thwart their plans, despite All Might's attempts to intervene. Ash stood up, prompting all 3 villains to aim their guns at him. Cracking his neck and knuckles, Ash presented them with a choice. They could surrender peacefully or face dire consequences. The villains hesitated, but before they could react, Ash vanished and reappeared between 2 of them, swiftly incapacitating them. The last villain lunged at him with a knife, but Ash countered, disarming him and ending the confrontation. Meanwhile, a furious Pomeranian shouted angrily, expressing his frustration. Kirishima, attempting to defuse the situation, suggested they simply ask for directions to the party. This caused those hiding to sweat, realizing the party was on the 1st floor, leaving them puzzled about how they ended up on the 90th floor. Kirishima approached the villains and innocently inquired about the party's location, which only annoyed them. One small villain decided to retaliate, growing larger and more intimidating. However, just as he was about to attack Kirishima, Ice suddenly intercepted him. Both Kirishima and Bakugo were surprised to see Todoroki emerge from hiding. He instructed his friends to continue while he dealt with the villains. Bakugo, eager for a fight, was ready to unleash his quirk on the taller villain. As Kirishima and Todoroki engaged the purple villain, Kirishima noticed the big guy preparing to strike Bakugo and pushed him out of the way, only to find himself stuck against the wall. Bakugo, fueled by anger, charged back into the fray. Meanwhile, Izumi and the others reached a dead end. Jiro spotted a hatch overhead and pointed it out. Iida expressed concern that it might be too small for Midoriya to fit through. Melissa reassured them that the hatch led to a door that could help them reach at least the 200th floor. Everyone turned to Minato, who panicked at the thought of climbing. Izumi, filled with determination, sternly urged him to climb, warning him of the consequences if 𝗟𝐼𝐬 were harmed due to his cowardice. Minato, frightened, quickly ascended the wall using his quirk, motivated by Izumi's fierce words. Ash continued to battle robots, effortlessly dismantling them as they tried to impede his progress through the tower. His sword, a stunning royal blue, cut through the mechanical foes with ease. As he ascended the stairs, he sensed Izumi's intense determination directed at someone, which amused him, knowing it stemmed from her concern for 𝗟𝐼𝐬. More robots approached, prompting Ash to power up slightly, growing frustrated with the increasing size and firepower of his adversaries. Izumi and her friends were racing up the stairs, destroying cameras in their path, unaware that they had already been spotted. Wolfram and his crew recognized the UA students approaching and ordered their remaining villains to set up defenses on the floors above. Izumi led her group as they reached the next level. She asked Melissa how much further they had to go. Melissa explained that they needed to break through a few more floors to reach the top. Suddenly, they were confronted by a swarm of robots. Kaminari turned to Momo, instructing her to create a sheet blanket. As she complied, Kaminari charged his quirk. With the blanket in place, he unleashed a powerful electrical attack against the robots. He decided to increase his output, but Jiro warned him not to overdo it. Before she could finish, Kaminari, caught up in his excitement, continued his assault, only to be ensnared by the robots as they recovered from their defenses. Seeing this, Izumi activated the red band on her wrist, allowing a full gauntlet to wrap around her hand and forearm, readying herself for the challenges ahead. Izumi decided to start at 60% power and sent a punch toward the robots, taking out more than half of them and forcing them to release Kaminari. She ordered everyone to destroy the robots and move forward as she created her sword again and charged at the remaining machines alongside her friends. Melissa warned everyone to be cautious with the servers, emphasizing that they couldn't afford to stop all the robots if the servers were damaged. She followed closely behind as they pushed past the robots. Meanwhile, Ash, sporting his own wings that were partly white and mostly blue, flew up to Izumi's location, sending more robots flying in the process. Despite his efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling that Izumi was in serious danger, prompting him to hurry as he rushed past the drones, destroying them with his aura staff. Bakugo, Todoroki, and Kirishima had finally defeated the villains and started rushing up the stairs to catch up with the others. Todoroki expressed his concern, stating that even Midoriya might need their help. Bakugo growled in response but increased his speed without saying a word. Izumi, Melissa, and Ochako separated from the group to hold off the robots that threatened to slow them down. Momo, Kyoka, Tenya, Denki, and Mineta were doing their best to fend off the robots, but Momo was weakened from creating too many cannonballs, and Mineta was injured from overusing his quirk. Denki was still caught up in his jamming mode, Tenya's engines had stalled, and Kyoka was struggling to send more sound waves at the robots. They found themselves overwhelmed. Tenya struggled against the wires that held him in place, expressing frustration at their situation. Ida hoped they had delayed the robots enough for the girls to reach the tower. Ochako decided to use her quirk on Melissa, making her float upward. Izumi spread her wings and flew up, grabbing Melissa's hand to ascend even higher. Melissa urged Ochako to use her quirk on herself as she noticed robots rushing toward her. However, Ochako insisted that her friends go on ahead, taking her stance to face the incoming threat. Izumi, concerned for her friend, urged her to use her quirk to float to safety, but Ochako remained resolute. Just as the robots were about to grab her, Bakugo appeared out of nowhere, blasting a small group of them away. A blue aura sphere then flew past them, destroying a significant number of robots. Everyone turned to see Ash, his wings spread wide, resembling an angel sent from above. His wings were larger and longer than Izumi's, showcasing his greater power. He instructed Izumi to keep going, assuring her that they would catch up as he charged at the robots with Bakugo and Todoroki close behind. Izumi threw her own aura sphere at a wall, breaking through, and both she and Melissa found themselves on the 199th floor. Izumi suggested they head to the control room, but she suddenly sensed an ominous aura approaching. Instinctively, she created her aura sword and spun around, swinging it at a villain with a bladed hand. The villain fell silently to the ground, leaving Izumi in shock and horror at having taken a human life. Though she had fought and defeated a Nomo before, this was different. This was a life she had ended out of pure instinct. Shaking, she looked at Melissa, who hugged her tightly. Melissa, sensing Izumi's distress, reassured her that they needed to hurry to save others, speaking with a determined tone to mask her own fear. Still shaken, Izumi nodded, unable to trust her voice, and they began to run up the stairs, with Izumi knocking out 2 more villains with her staff along the way. They soon reached the room but stayed outside, overhearing David and his assistant discussing a unit they needed while typing away at a large computer. David announced that it was coming down, prompting Sam to rush up the stairs to retrieve the unit box. Sam opened it and pulled out a steel case from within. David expressed relief that the fake villains had been worth the trouble to retrieve the case. However, he was startled when he heard a familiar voice call out to him. It was his daughter Melissa, along with her new friend Izumi. Melissa, shocked, questioned her father about what was happening and why he was trying to retrieve the device. David, taken aback by Melissa's presence, reminded her that she should be safe at the party. He explained that they had created a device to enhance any quirk because All Might was rapidly losing his power, and he wanted to give it to him to maintain his role as the symbol of peace. He insisted that Sam had helped him with the idea, and they needed to secure the device to keep peace. Izumi, filled with anger, confronted David, expressing her disbelief at his actions. She explained that her friends were out there fighting to protect everyone, and they had been hurt because of his reckless invention. Her emotions surged as she revealed the dried blood on her dress, a stark reminder of the battle they were in. David struggled to comprehend the situation, insisting that the villains were supposed to be fake and no one was meant to be hurt. Just then, they heard footsteps approaching. An unknown villain, claiming to be a fake villain, demanded the device from Sam. Sam reluctantly handed over the case to the villain known as 𝗟𝗏, who wore a lab coat and a metal mask. Seeing them distracted by the villain, Izumi forced Melissa to go shut off the robots. David was in shock as he confronted Sam, questioning the betrayal. Sam explained that David's actions had led to this moment, revealing that he had made a deal with villains for money in exchange for a device. As 𝗟𝗏 discreetly drew a pistol from his coat, he confirmed the matter of payment. Sam turned around only to be struck in the shoulder, causing him to fall back in pain and fear. 𝗟𝗏 laughed, stating that this was always part of the deal, and as he aimed at Sam again he was suddenly hit by a staff, sending him back. Izumi stood ready, wielding the staff. 𝗟𝗏 smirked as he commanded the metal floor and wires to rush at Izumi. She drew her sword, cutting through the incoming debris, but it was merely a distraction. 𝗟𝗏 seized the opportunity to strike David, knocking him unconscious with the butt of his pistol. He declared his intention to take David to create more devices for the black market and began to walk away with him slung over his shoulder. Izumi attempted to rush 𝗟𝗏 but was forced to dodge an incoming metal pillar. Unbeknownst to her, Ash was on his way to assist, having passed a fallen body and quickly realizing the situation. He used his aura to reach Izumi faster, sensing her pursuit of someone stronger than herself. Determined, he thought to himself that he was coming to help her. As he reached the rooftop, he saw Izumi about to fall. He rushed forward and caught her just in time. Setting her down, Ash glanced toward the helicopter. In an instant he was on the other side, carrying David away from the helicopter just before it exploded. He then floated down to Izumi, dropping David to the ground without a second thought. Noticing a gunshot wound on her shoulder, he began to heal her. All Might soon landed nearby, alarmed to see his student injured. He questioned what had happened to David, who was beginning to regain consciousness. David expressed his remorse, admitting that he had created a device to support All Might's hero work but had only caused chaos. He blamed himself for the situation, feeling that if he had acted differently, none of this would have occurred. Before All Might could respond, a metal pillar struck him, shocking Ash, who had thought the explosion had taken care of 𝗟𝗏. David attempted to rush to All Might's side but was suddenly ensnared by wires, pulling him toward a towering machine. 𝗟𝗏 gleefully remarked on the effectiveness of David's device as his quirk grew stronger. Ash stood up, extending both arms toward 𝗟𝗏. The villain smirked, underestimating Ash's resolve. Ash unleashed a barrage of aura spheres, each one more powerful than the last, as 𝗟𝗏 scrambled for cover. He shouted in anger, vowing to kill Ash first as he desperately defended himself. This scene unfolded as All Might, Melissa, Bakugo, Todoroki, Kirishima, Kaminari, Mineta, Momo, Kyoka, and Ochako arrived, witnessing Ash's relentless assault on 𝗟𝗏. They saw the attacks narrowly missing David as Ash focused his energy on the villain. All Might, having seen enough, charged through the debris that 𝗟𝗏 had manipulated, grabbing David and retreating to protect the students. With determination, Ash declared that he no longer needed to hold back. He concentrated a massive amount of aura into his hands before releasing a powerful wave toward 𝗟𝗏, shouting his attack's name. Unbeknownst to everyone, a black portal opened beside 𝗟𝗏, and a hand snatched the device from him. Before he could escape, the portal closed, and he was struck by Ash's attack, which began to disintegrate him. Those who were conscious witnessed the scene clearly. Ash was furious because Izumi was hurt. After finally ceasing his assault, he turned to Izumi, picking her up and carrying her to her friends and all. He urged them to leave and ensure everyone else was safe, walking past them with Izumi still unconscious in his arms. Days later, everyone left the island to return to the mainland. However, Ash had a heart-to-heart conversation with Izumi to reassure her that she need not worry about taking a life. He noticed that Inko and Eri were not in their rooms, indicating they had gone out to explore. Satisfied, he approached Izumi, who sat on the bed, lost in thought. He sat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder, startling her. Ash acknowledged the events in the tower, sharing that he understood the weight of taking a life for the first time. He revealed his own struggles, allowing Izumi to see the vulnerability behind his mask. He reassured her that she was not alone in her feelings. Tears welled in Izumi's eyes as she hugged Ash tightly, crying for the life she had taken. As she continued to cry, she found the courage to ask her question, wondering if it ever got easier to take a life. Izumi asked Ash how he felt the first time he took a life, and for a moment, silence hung in the air. Ash finally responded, explaining that it was a difficult experience, one that he had learned to live with over time. He shared that he had done it to protect his friends who had been captured when he was just 12 years old. Izumi felt horrified that he had faced such a burden at such a young age. Ash recounted how his friends were held hostage by an organization known as Team Rocket, with around 110 people in the camp. He paused for a moment, remembering the gravity of that day. He had managed to get the officials to rescue the hostages while he stayed behind, armed only with a pistol, a small machete, and 8 magazines. He steeled himself for what lay ahead. It was not seen as a fight. Many referred to that day as the beginning of genocide. He used all 9 magazines, taking down numerous foes. When he ran out of ammunition, he resorted to his machete, using the fallen bodies as cover to reach his next target. That day, he earned the grim title of the Judge of Humanity. As Ash shared his story, Izumi hugged him tighter, sensing the pain in his eyes. He explained that none of the kills were registered to him due to the adrenaline coursing through him. His machete broke before he could finish the task, but he didn't let that stop him. He used his bare hands to continue. The echoes of their screams haunted him, cries for mercy that they had never shown to others. That day became known as genocide, the BLD River, Judgment Day, and the God's Justice. Izumi, moved to tears, jumped up and kissed him passionately, both of them needing the connection. However, they decided to pause their moment and instead walked hand in hand toward the plane, with Eri clinging to Ash's hat. As they walked, Inko noticed a green tattoo curling up Ash's right arm, depicting a appealing dragon, while Izumi had a blue jackal and dragon entwined on her arm. Inko was surprised by their tattoos, as she didn't recall them visiting a tattoo shop and made a mental note to ask them about it later. The scene shifted to their little family trio sleeping in the same bed, with Izumi holding Eri closely, who was hugging her mother in her sleep, while Ash protectively held both of them. Eri began to wake up as sunlight streamed through the curtains. Rubbing her eyes and stretching in her mother's arms, she glanced at the alarm clock and realized it was December 25th, the day her parents had promised her a surprise. Excitedly, she crawled out of her mother's embrace and began jumping on the bed, urging her parents to wake up. Eri exclaimed that they had promised her a surprise, bouncing with enthusiasm. Ash and Izumi pretended to sleep, and Ash let out a loud snore, which made Izumi smile and Eri giggle before she jumped onto her parents. Izumi turned to Eri, kissing her little horn and playfully urging Ash to wake up. With a groan, Ash sat up, his hair resembling a lion's mane, which made the girls giggle. Determined to reveal the surprise, Ash suggested they head downstairs. He picked up Eri, who beamed with happiness, while Izumi stood up and slipped on her sandals. As the family made their way downstairs, they passed by colorful decorations adorning the halls, walls, doors, and ceiling. Eri was in awe of the vibrant decorations, and when they reached the common room, Ash set her down. She spun around, taking in the festive atmosphere, her eyes landing on the Christmas tree surrounded by presents. Turning to her parents, she saw Izumi standing there with a warm smile, wishing her a happy late birthday and a Merry Christmas. Ash emerged from the kitchen, carrying a cake adorned with candles shaped like the number 7. Izumi explained that they had learned just the day before that 𝐼𝐻𝐬's birthday was December 21st, and since they had missed it, they decided to celebrate today. Overwhelmed with emotion, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was close to tears as Izumi hugged her lovingly, and Ash joined them after placing the cake on the table. He assured 𝐼𝐻𝐬 that although she was not their child by BLD, they loved her just the same, and that would never change. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 burst into tears, hugging her parents tightly. Ash suggested they wait to open presents until everyone arrived, but in the meantime, they could enjoy cake for breakfast. He playfully booped 𝐼𝐻𝐬's nose, making her giggle. Izumi gently kissed 𝐼𝐻𝐬's head before cutting the cake and serving her a slice, which made 𝐼𝐻𝐬 very happy. After some time of laughter and joy, everyone from Class 1A finally came downstairs. Upon seeing the cake with the number 7, they realized it was 𝐼𝐻𝐬's birthday and her first Christmas. They all cheered in unison, wishing her a happy birthday and a Merry Christmas, except for 𝗪𝗱 and 𝐵𝐿𝐻𝐬. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 smiled at everyone, and the warmth of the moment filled the room. After everyone had a slice of cake, Ash presented 𝐼𝐻𝐬 with her first gift. When she opened the gift, 𝐼𝐻𝐬 discovered a pair of fingerless gloves in a vibrant green. Ash explained that these gloves were crafted by his mother long ago, originally made for him but now too small. He thought it would be nice for her to have them. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 looked at him in awe before slipping them on. They were a bit large, but they brought her joy. Soon, everyone began to unwrap their presents, and the day was filled with happiness, love, and laughter. Izumi was in class with her friends, focused on her work. It had been a few days since the incident at 𝐼𝐻𝐬, and she was slowly coming to terms with the weight of her actions, thanks to Ash. When she had asked him about the tattoos they shared, his explanation had surprised her, but she felt no longing to remove it. Now, she faced the challenge of explaining it to her friends, teachers, principal, and mother. Aizawa, pretending to sleep while granting his students a free PRD, observed the blue dragon tattoo on Izumi's arm, still trying to understand its origin. He thought about how Izumi had promised to explain it later in the dorms and decided to gather Mike, Midnight, Nizu, and All Might for the discussion. As the bell rang, he stood up, capturing his students' attention. He informed them that class would be short today since he and a few others wanted to understand the meaning behind Midoriya's tattoo. He then left, and his students began to pack their belongings, only to find that Izumi had already rushed out to the dorms. They followed her lead. Momo expressed her confusion about why Izumi had a tattoo at such a young age, noting that she had only been told an explanation would come later. Tsuyu suggested that perhaps it was a mark shared between two aura users, causing her friends to pause in surprise. She explained that animals often leave marks on each other, and her friends began to understand her point. They resumed their walk to the dorms, and Ochako pondered Tsuyu's theory, finding it increasingly plausible given how close Izumi and Ash had become since the villain attack. Once they reached the dorms, they found Izumi chatting with Ash in the kitchen while 𝐼𝐻𝐬 watched cartoons in the common room. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 was currently engrossed in an episode of 𝗟𝗚. Ash noticed Izumi's classmates and pointed them out, prompting her to turn and wave. She informed her friends that they needed to change because they were waiting for Aizawa, All Might, Midnight, Present Mike, Principal Nizu, and her mother. Her friends hurried off to get ready. Izumi then turned to Ash, playfully insisting that he help her explain everything. She added a light-hearted threat about no more cuddles if he didn't comply, which made Ash freeze momentarily before he sighed in defeat. He agreed to explain what everyone wanted to know, and Izumi smiled triumphantly before hugging him. Ash returned the affection with a gentle kiss on her forehead, and they approached 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who was still captivated by the cartoon. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 beamed at her parents, who affectionately kissed her head. With pure joy, she declared her love for them, and they responded warmly, embracing her closer. Izumi's friends returned to the common room, settling on the couches to watch TV while waiting for their teachers and Izumi's mother to arrive. Meanwhile, Aizawa was discussing with his colleagues the impracticality of Izumi having a tattoo at her age, concerned about the influence it might have on younger students. Mike and Midnight chuckled at Aizawa's protective nature, teasing him for being overly cautious. As they approached the dorms, they could hear the lively chatter of students and 𝐼𝐻𝐬's laughter. Upon entering the common room, they witnessed Ash playfully giving 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 a wedgie for making a foolish comment, with 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 laughing at the scene. Izumi was absorbed in a book as her classmates either laughed or tried to convince Ash to let 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 go. At that moment, Vlad King and his class from 1B walked in, taken aback by the chaos. He asked Aizawa if he planned to intervene. Aizawa replied that 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 often made inappropriate comments, so Ash's actions were not surprising. He nodded at Ash, signaling him to let 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 down. Ash released 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿, who fell to the floor, and then returned to sit beside Izumi, pulling 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 onto his lap to enjoy the moment together. Ash indicated that he would provide a clear explanation about the tattoos he and Izumi shared, prompting Nizu to emerge from Aizawa's scarf. Nizu chuckled, acknowledging Ash's directness, a trait expected from the strongest being on the planet. Ash urged everyone to sit down and pay attention, emphasizing that he would not repeat himself. He conveyed the significance of the tattoos, which represented their love and commitment to one another, marking them as bonded in a powerful aura marriage that could not be undone. The revelation shocked everyone in the room, except for 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐿 and Izumi, who were already aware. Ash explained that this bond doubled their power, making them the strongest in their generation, and hinted that children like 𝗟𝗓 and 𝐾𝐮𝐬 could one day surpass them. He affectionately patted 𝗟𝗓 on the head, eliciting a bright smile from her, while 𝐾𝐮𝐬 pondered how Ash could foresee his potential. Ash continued, stating that he and Izumi were essentially married, and their connection granted Izumi access to some of his more formidable abilities. He noted that her stamina, durability, strength, and speed had significantly increased, while his own remained the same due to years of training. The bond they shared also allowed for telepathy and a deep emotional connection, enabling them to sense each other's feelings and protect one another. As Ash concluded his explanation, 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 rushed to embrace her daughter tightly, expressing her joy and pride, leaving everyone else in stunned silence. Izumi, finally released from her mother's hug, sat down next to 𝗟𝗓, thanking her mother with a smile. Aizawa, maintaining his calm demeanor, expressed his disbelief at the news of Izumi's marriage, receiving a confirming nod from her. He sighed, feeling a headache coming on, prompting laughter from Mike and Midnight. Monoma attempted to continue his teasing but was swiftly silenced by Ash, who appeared behind him with a serious expression. Ash's icy tone warned Monoma to reconsider his words, and the boy wisely chose to remain quiet. Bakugo and Todoroki felt frustration at the news of Izumi's marriage, while the perverted duo thought about speaking up but were deterred by Ash's glare. Momo and the other girls from classes 1A and B contemplated the significance of having such powerful individuals married at a young age. Ochako, curious, asked about Ash's immortality, prompting everyone to look to him for clarification. Ash explained that he was never truly immortal. He looked young because he was only 17 years old. He shared that the temple built by his friends and family had seals that prevented him from aging until someone with a powerful aura could unseal him. He recounted how, despite being a formidable child feared by both enemies and allies, he had suggested the idea of sealing himself to those he trusted after defeating his foes, leading to his current state, over 800 years later. He then revealed a picture from his pocket, showing a younger version of himself alongside a young lady. Ash shared a picture of his mother, proudly revealing that the two pocket monsters beside her were Pokemon. 𝗟𝗓 admired how appealing Ash's mother appeared, while 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐿 and Izumi were equally impressed by her youthful appearance. Nizu remarked on how proud she must have been of Ash, to which he nodded in agreement. Ash reflected on his upbringing, explaining that his mother raised him alone after his father left to complete his training. He recalled how the professor in his town once told him he was as adventurous and daring as his mother, even sharing her cocky attitude for a whole year. However, his demeanor shifted as he recounted a darker moment in his past, when he had to confront his enemies to protect his friends. He described that day as chaotic, where he was the only one to walk away unscathed, leaving a lasting impression on the officers who discovered a child no older than 12 had taken lives. The room fell silent as everyone processed the weight of his words, shocked by his young age during such a pivotal moment. Izumi gently squeezed Ash's hand, offering her support, and he responded with a tender kiss on her hand. She then expressed the need for them to train harder to protect those who couldn't defend themselves. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 felt immense pride for her daughter, who stood by Ash even after hearing his difficult backstory. 𝐼𝐼 suddenly stood up, capturing everyone's attention as she declared her ambition to become a legendary hero. Her enthusiasm made the girls around her gush over her cuteness. Ash playfully reminded her that she needed to rest and train if she wanted to achieve that dream, eliciting a delighted giggle from her. Meanwhile, Izumi sat in class, listening to Present Mike teach English. An unfamiliar anger bubbled within her, fueled by the thought of someone flirting with Ash while he was at the park with 𝐼𝐼. Unbeknownst to her, that was indeed happening, as Ash and 𝐼𝐼 enjoyed their day out while other parents approached Ash to learn more about him. Ash kept a watchful eye on 𝐼𝐼, relishing the sight of her carefree play. However, he noticed a few single mothers nearby, intrigued by his attentive parenting. He thought about how Izumi might be feeling, imagining her frustration. His thoughts were interrupted when he saw 𝐼𝐼 kick a boy wearing a red hat with horns. Sighing, he approached them to understand the situation. He asked 𝐼𝐼 what had happened, and she explained that the boy had been saying that heroes would abandon them. Ash found her sass amusing but maintained a serious expression. He turned to the boy, who was rubbing his stomach from the kick, and asked for his name. The boy, with a cold expression, introduced himself as Kota Izumi. Ash gently patted both children on the head and inquired about Kota's feelings towards heroes. Kota's response revealed deep-seated anger stemming from the loss of his parents, who were heroes that had left him alone. Ash empathized with Kota, explaining that a hero's job often involved self-sacrifice for the greater good. He assured Kota that his parents had likely been thinking of him while trying to create a safer world. As Kota began to tear up, Ash embraced him in a comforting hug, pulling 𝐼𝐼 in as well. The three shared a moment of warmth, and Ash encouraged them to play nicely. 𝐼𝐼 excitedly took Kota's hand, urging him to join her on the slides. Kota, initially stunned, soon smiled and ran ahead, prompting 𝐼𝐼 to playfully protest against his head start. Ash chuckled softly as he stood back up, content to watch the children enjoy their day. Meanwhile, Izumi and her classmates completed their writing exam and prepared for the physical exam, eager to demonstrate their growth. She wondered what Ash was up to, her thoughts drifting to him as they moved on to the next challenge. Izumi thought about how Ash was probably keeping 𝐼𝐼 out of trouble, especially since she had been spending time with Mina and Toru, picking up their sass. She hoped Ash knew how to handle it better than she did. As she brought out her phone, she noticed a text from Ash that read, "Did you?" Confused, she looked at the accompanying picture of an angry baby duck, which made her burst into laughter, falling to the floor and puzzling her teachers and classmates. When they saw her phone, they couldn't help but join in her amusement. Principal Nizu, perched in Aizawa's scarf, cleared his throat to capture everyone's attention. He explained that instead of fighting robots like Class 1B, they would be facing their teachers. This was because the students had gained significant experience from fighting villains, and they wanted to see how much stronger they had become thanks to Ash's training. The students felt a mix of excitement and nervousness at the prospect of battling their teachers. Determined to showcase her growth, Izumi listened as Aizawa announced that he and two other teachers would be wearing weights to give the students a fair chance. The students then watched as 𝐼𝐼 landed in front of them, announcing that he would be facing Izumi and Bakugo. This revelation shocked the class, but Izumi remained unfazed, ready to prove her strength. Izumi and Bakugo arrived at their designated training site with 𝐼𝐼, who left them to strategize. Bakugo, as usual, was aggressive, declaring that he would defeat 𝐼𝐼. Izumi sighed, sensing 𝐼𝐼 preparing to attack. She quickly summoned her wings and flew above the blast radius, causing Bakugo to be propelled through a wall as 𝐼𝐼 landed where they had just been. 𝐼𝐼, with a smile that held a hint of malice, declared his readiness for battle. He launched himself at Bakugo, who retaliated with a barrage of powerful aura spheres. However, 𝐼𝐼 absorbed the impact and countered with a punch that sent Bakugo crashing into a wrecked bus, knocking him out. A mechanical voice announced Bakugo's failure, shocking those who had passed. Determined, Izumi gathered her aura and activated her one-for-all full cowling at 40%, her current limit. She charged at 𝐼𝐼, moving faster than ever before, pushing him to his limits as they exchanged blows that shook the ground. Izumi managed to land a hit on 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐻's face, sending him flying back. Realizing she needed to finish the fight, she launched an aura sphere at 𝐼𝐻𝐽𝐻's abdomen, knocking the wind out of him. This gave her the opportunity to secure him with 𝐻𝐻𝐷𝐶FFS. The mechanical voice announced her success, and her classmates erupted in cheers, while Aizawa and his friends smiled at her achievement. After some time, Izumi returned with 𝐼𝐻𝐻, who was carrying an unconscious Bakugo. Aizawa felt disappointed in Bakugo's performance, thinking he would need to teach him more seriously to keep him in line. His thoughts were interrupted by 𝗟𝐼, who ran up to Izumi excitedly, bringing a smile to Aizawa's face as he watched a child with a troubled past find joy. 𝗟𝐼 excitedly recounted her day, mentioning how she had made a new friend and had fun playing. Izumi picked her up and hugged her, expressing her happiness that 𝗟𝐼 had made a new friend. Aizawa then announced that those who passed would be going to camp, and even those who failed would also attend. This news delighted several students, while Bakugo seethed in frustration over his failure against 𝐼𝐻𝐻. He glared at Ash, vowing to settle the score and prove he was the strongest, unaware that Ash could sense his emotions, though it didn't matter since Ash could easily defeat him. She never asked how he got his scars because she knew they were the result of his battles with enemies and the intense training he had undergone. Gently, she placed 𝗟𝐼 on the bed before standing up beside Ash, tracing her fingers over his scars. Ash didn't mind. His old friends used to do the same whenever they saw his scars, which he wore without shame. His mother had often traced them gently, tears in her eyes, remembering the pain he endured after facing enemies he had to defeat. Ash took her hand gently and kissed her palm, then leaned in for another kiss. Izumi returned the kiss, and after a moment, they broke apart, smiling at each other. Ash expressed his surprise at falling in love with such an appealing and strong young woman, causing Izumi to blush. Their moment was interrupted by giggles from the bed, where 𝗟𝐼 was watching them. Ash playfully declared that he would make 𝗟𝐼 laugh because he was the tickle monster, and he began to tickle her, sending her into fits of laughter. 𝗟𝐼 squealed for help, but Izumi joined in on the fun, making 𝗟𝐼 laugh even harder. They paused to let 𝗟𝐼 catch her breath, and Izumi affectionately told her, "We love you, Snowball," as she and Ash kissed 𝗟𝐼's head softly. 𝗟𝐼 felt happy with her parents, and the troubles of the past faded from her mind thanks to their love. Checking the time, Ash stood up and suggested they get ready to buy 𝗟𝐼 some gear and camping clothes. He grabbed his clothes and headed to the restroom for a quick shower. Izumi began to gather clothes for herself and 𝗟𝐼, picking out a pink shirt, breathes, socks, and underwear for 𝗟𝐼, who smiled at the sight of her favorite color. Ash emerged from the bathroom in casual clothes, blue shoes, breathes, and a snug black t-shirt, which made Izumi blush even though she had seen him half-naked before. She quickly took 𝗟𝐼 with her to the bathroom to get ready, while Ash smirked, knowing he was making her flustered on purpose. After grabbing his hat, Ash made his way to the common area where some of Class 1A were waiting. Their eyes widened at the sight of his muscular build and the scars that adorned his arms. Ash felt a bit annoyed by their stares and remarked, "Take a picture, it'll last longer," prompting them to turn away and return to their activities. He headed to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for himself, Izumi, and 𝗟𝐼. Having learned to cook from his mother and friends, Ash decided to make chocolate chip pancakes, bacon, sunny-side-up eggs, French toast, and applesauce for 𝗟𝐼. As he cooked, he sensed 𝗟𝐼 trying to sneak up on him, prompting a smirk before he spun around and caught her in a hug, eliciting a cute pout from her. 𝗟𝐼 playfully complained about not catching him this time, and Ash kissed her little horn, making her giggle. He explained that he wasn't easily startled and returned to the stove to finish cooking. 𝗟𝐼, starting to drool at the delicious smell, was set down by Ash, who told her to sit at the table. She climbed onto a chair, eager for her applesauce. Ash placed her breakfast in front of her, then set down 2 more plates for himself and Izumi. He smiled as 𝗟𝐼 began to eat, and soon Izumi joined them, cleaning 𝗟𝐼's cheek with a napkin and reminding her not to make a mess. After a while, Ash, Izumi, and 𝗟𝐼 arrived at the mall with the rest of Class 1A. They discussed their needs for the camping trip before splitting into groups, with Izumi taking 𝐼𝐼𝐬 to shop for camping clothes and shoes, leaving Ash on his own. He wandered through the mall, seeking a less crowded area, sensing a malicious intent following him. As he walked, he felt the presence behind him growing more agitated, but he remained unconcerned, ready to act if the malice targeted others. Eventually, he found a quieter spot and turned to see a hooded young man standing a few feet away. The young man looked surprised, and Ash, with an air of authority, demanded to know why he was being followed. The hooded figure, Tamura Shigaraki, realized he had made a grave mistake. He felt intimidated by Ash, who seemed even more formidable than All for One. Shigaraki's agitation grew as he confronted Ash, expressing his frustration over the attention Ash and Izumi had received while his own plans had faltered. Ash regarded him coolly and replied that it was because they both had the resolve and ideology to pursue their passions, unlike Shigaraki, who simply destroyed everything in his path. Honesty, you are a pathetic boy. You are no match for Izumi, and even in your future, you will still be no match, Ash said coldly as he stared Shigaraki down. Ash began to release a small amount of his own killer intent, causing Shigaraki to tremble with fear. You will never be able to face me in your future. Both Izumi and 𝗟𝗓 built their resolve and ideologies around All Might. That is why they are far stronger than you. Ash stated as he started to walk away, but not before unleashing 10 small aura spheres at top speed, eliminating any nomis that Shigaraki had brought with him. Get lost before I decide to end you myself. With that final statement, Ash walked away from a completely petrified Shigaraki, who called Kudojiiri to teleport him back. During this whole time, Izumi had been listening in on Ash's conversation with Shigaraki, but she didn't let it bother her too much, knowing that Ash was stronger than anyone she had ever known. She was confident that nothing could sway him to join evil. Izumi then began to gather the gear she needed for the camping trip when she noticed a strange flower she had never seen before. She turned to a store clerk and asked, "Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt whatever you are doing, but I just want to know what kind of flower this is." The clerk looked confused, having never seen it before. "I honestly have no idea, but you can take it if you want because the boss hasn't had anything new come in lately." "So go ahead and take it," the store clerk replied. Izumi happily grabbed the flower and continued to gather everything she needed for the camp, including items for 𝗟𝐼𝐬. As soon as she finished paying for her things and stepped out of the store, she was met with Ash waiting for her. "Got everything you need?" Ash asked as he took the bags from her, making her smile. "Yes, I got everything for us and 𝗟𝐼𝐬, Izumi replied, presenting the strange flower to Ash. "I even found a strange flower." But as she looked at Ash, she saw a shocked expression, which surprised her. "Izumi, you found a time flower," Ash said, opening the bag to place it inside. "Not just any ordinary one, but one of my own," Ash explained as he carefully stored the now-known time flower. "We'll see it open up later. For now, let's find the rest of your classmates." They made their way to find the rest of Class 1A. Ash was observing the time flower in the common room with 𝗟𝐼𝐬 on his lap and Izumi sitting next to him. All of Izumi's friends were present, either annoying Bakugo or watching TV. Before anyone could react, Ash let out a small pulse of aura, causing the time flower to open and catching everyone's attention. They saw a 10-year-old Ash with the biggest and brightest smile, surrounded by his friends from Kanto, enjoying themselves. "These are my old memories before I was given my titles," Ash said as they saw a grown woman with brown hair and eyes, wearing a yellow blouse under a pink sweater and a slightly purple skirt. Ash's gaze softened a bit, catching a few students' attention before they heard the woman speak. "Ash, why don't you and your friends come on in already? I have dinner on the table. We don't want it to get cold now, do we?" Delia said as Ash and his friends quickly ran into the house to enjoy some of Delia's delicious food. Everyone but Izumi was confused about who this lady was, but what they heard next shocked them. "Thanks, Mom," younger Ash said as he hugged his mother tightly, who gladly returned the embrace. "Come on, guys, or else I'm going to eat it by myself," Ash said, laughing as he ran to the kitchen, with his friends Misty and Brock in pursuit. "Hey, don't eat with us, Ash. You're literally a black hole when it comes to food," Misty said as she quickly sat down beside him. Brock sat on the other side as Delia made sure they didn't slip and fall. "I have to agree with Misty. Ash, you do tend to eat everything in sight, especially when it comes to your mom's cooking, which I will admit is by far the best food I have ever tried, Brock said as he and Ash chuckled while Misty sighed, wondering why she was friends with them again. The timed flower then closed, showing no more of the memory. Ash sighed as the flower became a bit dull. Sometimes I wonder how my life would have turned out if I hadn't decided to cause such a distraction to save my friends and hadn't taken any lives, Ash said as he stared at the time flower. Izumi gently grabbed his hand to let him know she was there for him, making him smile at her before giving her a kiss and kissing Eri horn, which made her giggle. Papa's mama is very pretty, Eri said, which made Ash chuckle a bit. Yes, very pretty, and I'm sure if she were here right now, she would want nothing more than to shower you with love, Ash said as he started to get up. Anyway, it's time for bed, we have a long day tomorrow, he added as he and Izumi began to make their way upstairs to sleep while Ash carried Eri. Izumi and her friends were gathering all their things for the camp, such as clothes, climbing shoes, bug spray, and more. Ash was tagging along since he was one of the teachers at UA. He decided it was best to accompany them to help train them and make them stronger again, especially since he knew that Shigaraki would try to make a move on them. As they made their way out of the dorms with their bags, Mina shouted, "This is going to be so much fun." She began to break dance in front of her friends, impressing them. Ash was less than impressed, which showed as he displayed his aura, causing them to line up like soldiers. Ash informed everyone that they were going for training, not for fun, his cold tone causing shivers among the students, except for Eri and Izumi, who understood his intentions. He instructed everyone to board the bus, prompting them to hurry. Aizawa appreciated Ash's presence, knowing he would help keep the students in line. As they stored their bags in the bus's side compartment and took their seats, Mina and her best friend Toru began gossiping. Shoto dozed off, Momo immersed herself in a book, and Kyoka enjoyed her music. Ash sat beside Izumi, who leaned against him, dozing off. Eri, seeing her mother napping, decided to join her. Ash smiled down at his family, reflecting on how he never thought he would allow himself to be in a relationship, but Izumi's bright and cheerful personality had broken through his cold exterior. He imagined his mother teasing him relentlessly if she were there. His thoughts drifted to his old friends and the lengths he went to for them, ensuring their dreams came true. They had never turned their backs on him, even after all the battles he fought for peace. He remembered Sabrina, the girl he helped regain her emotions. Her laughter echoed in his mind, recalling the day he and his friend Hunter, a ghost Pokemon, assisted her. Sabrina had come to his aid when he was in shock after a traumatic event, managing to get him to open up and confide in her. Over nearly 6 years, she had stood by him, reminding him that he was not a monster or a murderer, but a man willing to do what others would not to protect his friends and family, striving for peace. Ash shook his head slightly and looked out the bus window, smiling at the fond memories with friends who considered him family, despite the burdens he carried. They trusted him with their lives. He turned to Izumi, who had fallen asleep on his shoulder, brushing a strand of hair away and gently kissing her forehead. He resolved to continue protecting the innocent, ensuring they would not face the horrors he had encountered. Leaning back, he decided to take a short nap, knowing the drive would take at least 2 hours. 2 hours later, everyone exited the bus. Ash and Eri stood beside Aizawa, who was preparing for the training session. He was keeping an eye out for the others who would assist in training classes 1A and 1B. Some students looked around, noticing that their sister class was not with them. Mineta, needing to use the restroom, exclaimed his urgency, while Kirishima pointed out that they were not at a rest stop. Aizawa observed a car approaching and noted its timely arrival. As the vehicle came to a stop next to the bus, 3 figures emerged: Madalai, 𝗶𝐿, and Kota Izumi. Eri's excitement was palpable when she spotted Kota, who greeted her with a smile and wave. Ash watched the scene unfold, feeling a sense of nostalgia as he remembered the antics of his old friends. Madalai explained that the camp was a few miles away, and the realization hit the students. 𝐼𝐻 shouted for everyone to run back to the bus, but 𝗶𝐿 intercepted them, declaring that their training started immediately. With a swift movement, she sent the students tumbling off the cliff, dust settling around them. Aizawa noticed Ash's gaze and followed it to see Izumi flying gracefully in the air. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose, while Ash chuckled. Aizawa remarked that he didn't get paid enough for this, drawing the attention of Madalari and 𝗶𝐵𝐸. They watched Izumi descend in front of Ash, who praised her for staying vigilant, making her blush with pride. Ash suggested they head to the camp and wait for the rest of their classmates. He picked up Koda while Izumi took 𝗟𝗍's hand. Turning to the pros, Ash announced they would see them at the camp, then sprouted his own wings and took off with Izumi. Aizawa sighed again before returning to the bus, while Madalari and 𝗶𝐶𝐵𝐸 headed back to their car, remarking on the long training camp ahead. Meanwhile, in Class 1A, Minata's terrified screams echoed as he fled from a dirt beast, while the rest of the class fought valiantly to push past the obstacles, watching each other's backs. As sunset approached, the 19 students emerged from the forest, weary from their efforts. Bakugo grimaced, nursing his wrist from overuse, while Ochako fought nausea from her quirk's exertion. Sato appeared equally drained, and Momo looked in need of nourishment, her frame appearing frail. Todoroki, fatigued from suching between ice and fire, showed signs of exhaustion as well. Tsuyu looked like she was about to fall over. Tenya was limping slightly, having relied heavily on his special move. Aoyama was clutching his stomach, having overused his naval laser. Mineta had a cut on his head. Shiro felt pain in his elbows. Ojiro was holding his tail, which ached from striking so many dirt beasts. Toru was exhausted and limping, having acted as bait for her classmates to take down the creatures. Jiro appeared ready to collapse, having used her jacks repeatedly to locate and attack the beasts. Kaminari was in a jamming mode, trying to keep spirits up. Tokoyami was slightly trembling, having expended a lot of energy to allow Dark Shadow to inflict significant damage. Kirishima felt sore from overusing his quick movements, and Mina was similarly fatigued from using her acid to dissolve many limbs. Shoji was limping alongside Koda, who was calling upon animals for assistance while Shoji defended him from any dirt beasts that got past the rest of the class. They spotted Izumi playing with the kids, with Ash, Aizawa, and the two pro heroes observing them. Shiro expressed his frustration, pointing out that they were supposed to arrive by noon. Madalari scratched her head awkwardly, laughing a bit as she explained that they had estimated the time based on their vehicles. The students were not pleased, primarily because they were tired and hungry. Todoroki questioned how Midoriya managed to keep going when the others were struggling. Aizawa explained that unlike the rest, she had maintained her guard and dodged 𝗶𝐶𝐵𝐸's attacks before they even began. Ash noticed what Momo and Ochako were holding and remarked on the time flowers they had found. Eri was excited, as it meant she could learn more about her father when he was around her age. Ash picked one up and used his aura to activate it. Suddenly, the environment transformed into a room where they saw a younger Ash trembling as he looked at his hands. He remarked to himself that it was that day. Izumi noticed and reached out to him, taking his hand to show her support, which he appreciated deeply even if he didn't voice it. As they watched, the door to the room opened, and Ash's mother rushed in, calling out to him with concern. Despite her pleading, he remained silent and motionless, lost in his own turmoil. His friends entered the room, trying to get his attention, but nothing seemed to work. After a few hours, Delia left to make calls for help for her son. Ash observed this with an impassive expression, while the others felt a wave of emotions. Ran up to Ash and hugged his leg, prompting him to pick her up. He explained that this was the day after he had taken many lives, and the shock had left him unable to speak for hours. They turned their attention back to the younger Ash, who was still unresponsive despite the comforting presence of his friends. Then, a young lady entered the room, dressed in a pink blouse and white jeans, with unusual objects on her wrists. Everyone wondered who she was, including Izumi. Ash simply stated her name, revealing that she was related to Izumi, and they could see the resemblance in her green hair. Sabrina approached Ash and knelt down, gently grasping his hands in an attempt to get his attention. Although he flinched at first, she held on. She softly urged him to look at her, and slowly, he raised his gaze, revealing a haunted look in his eyes that spoke of his struggles. To everyone's surprise, Sabrina pulled him into a comforting hug, assuring him that he was not alone. Ash gradually returned the embrace, breaking down in tears. At that moment, their surroundings shifted back to normal. Izumi looked at Ash, whose expression remained unchanged, but she understood that he was affected by the experience. When she pulled him into a hug, he reciprocated, realizing he needed the comfort even if he wouldn't admit it. Eri hugged her paper tightly. Madalai, having composed herself after witnessing Ash's past, instructed everyone to head inside for a meal, reminding them that they had a long day ahead and needed to rest. The students walked inside without much complaint, still processing what they had seen. Ash pocketed the remaining time flowers, not yet ready to confront their memories. The family of 3 followed the class and the 3 pro heroes inside. Everyone in the girls' changing room cooed at Eri for looking so adorable in her own little hero suit. Mina, with her ever-excited tone and boundless energy, remarked on how ready Eri looked to kick butt and save lives. Eri giggled, and just then her mother picked her up. Izumi noted that this little hero still had a long way to go and that they needed to hurry so they wouldn't be late. Izumi woke up in her lover's warm embrace, feeling happy to start the day cozy and content. She heard some cute snoring from her arms and looked down to see little Eri sleeping peacefully. With a soft gaze, Izumi leaned down and kissed Eri's head gently, expressing her affection for her little snowball. She then looked up at Ash and shared a brief kiss with him, telling him she loved him, her Aura King. Just as she was about to get out of bed, Ash, who had been awake the whole time, pulled her into a tender kiss. He returned her sentiment, calling her his Aura Queen, and then began to rise from the bed. The first thing that caught Izumi's attention were his scars.